All right, good evening, everyone. Sorry, just working out my microphone distance. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's council meeting. First of all, council would like to acknowledge the Wadawurrung people as the traditional owners of this lands, waterways, under the incredible skies which we meet on today. We pay our respects to the elders past and present, acknowledge all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are part of the greater Geelong community today. Now, this meeting is being broadcast on the internet, and a recording of the meeting will be published on Council's website. My name is Trent Sullivan, and as the Mayor of City Greater Geelong Council, I'll be chairing the February Council meeting tonight, and thank you all for attending. So I'd like to welcome everyone to what is an historic occasion here at the Northern Aquatic and Community Hub, and hello to many of the community members who are streaming online. Tonight is the first official opening event at our brand new $65 million facility. A facility built by the people of the northern suburbs, for the people of the northern suburbs. And one that will employ many hundreds as well, with over half of the 250 ongoing employees of these facilities being from the local suburbs as well. Later, and very shortly, we'll be hearing from our two Windermere ward councillors. We'll be giving a presentation on what's been going on in the wider ward, so I'm sure they'll be discussing this facility in that presentation as well. But I do want to say how proud I am to be with you all here tonight, how proud you should all be of having an incredible facility right here in the northern suburbs. Because the Northern Aquatic and Community Hub, I say, is now the jewel of Nor Lane and the northern suburbs. It is something that we could not have achieved, though, without our funding partners, being the Australian government and the state government as well. And of course, without the support of the northern communities. So to the council group who voted unanimously to commit over $44 million to this facility, to this project, they should be very proud, and I thank them for their courage and their vision and for the community that supported them in doing so. And speaking of pride, the northern suburbs has historically been home to a very diverse and proud group of people from many different backgrounds, mixed nationality, and strongly included multicultural populations amongst its key assets. On Saturday, the region celebrated its collective multiculturalism with the annual Paco Festa, which highlighted the great level of pride that our city has in its roots and its backgrounds. That we are proudly a warmly welcoming and inclusive city. And it's events such as Paco Festa which serve as such a great reminder that no matter where you are from around the world, your background, everybody is welcome here in Geelong. And that is something that all of us in the community should be incredibly proud of. Now, we have a number of questions from the community tonight to get through, but before I get into question time, I'll pass over to the Windermere Ward councillors, as I said, Deputy Mayor Anthony Aiken and Councillor Sarah Hathaway for their presentation and Northern update. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Good evening, everyone. There's been a lot of activity and development here in the Windermere ward over the most recent period. And tonight we've got the privilege just to present and reflect on some of those events and projects. First of all, the Commonwealth Games legacy. Council looks forward to working alongside Development Victoria to see Stead Park hockey facility upgrade completed by 2026. In terms of the Regional Housing Fund and the big housing build, this provides great opportunities to increase affordable and social housing stock across a large number of suburbs and locations in Greater Geelong. We want to recognise the work that Real Deal for Geelong was also doing in this space, with housing being a key area of focus for Real Deal. Council supports this community-led initiative and will have councillors attend Real Deal's next forum in mid-March. We've also been active at a range of recent community events, including Paco Festa, the weekend just gone. There was a big representation there from the northern suburbs across many cultures, sharing their dance, their costume, their art, their music, and it was a real privilege for many of us to be part of that over the weekend. A couple of weeks ago, in terms of the diversity angle, many of us attended the Rainbow Pride Festival at Johnson Park. And for myself, personally, it was a real privilege to speak at that event on behalf of the City of Greater Geelong and celebrate diversity in our city. We also saw the more annual swim quite recently in North Shore. to, I guess, draw attention to the beauty at Moorpannual Park and the foreshore down there, and our very own mayor, I think, participated in that swim early morning. And we also had the Open Mosque Day, which our Deputy Mayor spoke at, and again, it was just great to see community come together, an acknowledgement of the great diversity in the northern suburbs.
Thank you, Sarah, and look, what a great pleasure is actually be here to be at the first ever City of Greater Geelong Council meeting at our new Nash Civic Hall, and I actually am blown away how fabulous this facility is, and thank you to all the Northern Suburbs residents who have actually come out tonight to attend our particular meeting. I hope the large numbers is because you're interested in what Council's doing. I hope the large numbers aren't because you're just here to actually look at this fabulous facility. But we are extremely proud of what we've been able to achieve with the Nash. We still have a lot of work to do. We've got a naming process. We've got other activities that we need to complete the completion of this particular project. But this really is our most significant event space for the community in Geelong, owned by the City of Greater Geelong, and to have it in the northern suburbs. It is fantastic to see my former council colleague, Councillor Gresbeck, at the back of the room, and I also acknowledge Sarah's support over the last nearly 12 months as well to deliver this particular project for the community. Doing it in the northern suburbs is a challenge. Achieving it in the northern suburbs is a challenge. To actually deliver it and actually be as good as what it looks like is overwhelming for all of us. And something that Sarah and I do want to do is acknowledge each of our council colleagues. The decision to actually invest in this facility was one of the bravest and most courageous decisions I've actually seen a council make in the City of Greater Geelong. We did receive funding support from the federal and state governments of around $8.5 million each, but there still was a funding shortfall of around about $48 million. And this particular council made the strongest decision I've ever seen to actually fund it themselves. So the reality is it would not have happened without the courageous and bold decision of this council group. And on behalf of Sarah and I, we'd actually like to just give a little presentation to each of the councillors tonight. Sarah, if you'd like to hand those around. And just to explain to members of the community, we actually asked could we have some of the old roof of Norlane Pool, which was an icon of the northern suburbs, and we actually have cut a piece of the old Norlane Pool, placed it into an historic frame, and it's Sarah and my pleasure to actually give that to each of our councillors tonight to say thank you for their support. And I do ask you to join myself and Sarah in giving a clap to the council group for their brave and courageous decision.
Moving on to the Lara Recreation Reserve Master Plan Stage 2, the new baseball precinct. So out to Lara, construction is closing in on the second stage of the Lara Recreation Reserve Master Plan. This stage is a $5.545 million project, to be specific, which has been funded by the council, except for a $1 million contribution from the state government. It's creating a new pavilion catering to 3 different codes: baseball, football and cricket. And there's also an extensive reconstruction of the baseball fields, expected to be completed in the middle of this year. The upgrade follows the opening of the new netball and tennis pavilion in the reserve.
Thanks, Sarah. And the next project we'd like to draw attention to is actually in Batesford, even though it's called Bell Park. And it's actually good to see the Bell Park football and netball recreation club here tonight. But this is actually the Bell Park Sports Club, which is in Batesford, and it's quite unique that most of our soccer clubs actually have names that don't relate to where they actually are. The North Geelong Warriors are actually based in Lara. The Geelong Soccer Club is based in Corio. The Bell Park Soccer Club is actually based in Batesford. and the Coria Soccer Club is actually based in Bell Park. So just to make it really easy for people to understand, how wonderful our soccer community is, but this particular project is quite unique. The land actually sits between our northern and western growth zones, so it's actually of major significance for the council in terms of providing recreation and sporting facilities. Instead of duplicating those facilities under the growth plans that are associated with it, council recognised there was a really good opportunity to purchase that site and actually upgrade those facilities to there as well too, to help cater for not just the existing need but future need as well too. And I look forward to the opening of that project when it does occur.
So we'll move on to the Anarchy Recreation Reserve. So there's been a $510,000 expansion and upgrade of the netball facilities at Anarchy Reserve, which is underway. We're using funding from the Australian and Victorian governments to build an extra netball court, plus sports lighting, players' shelter and fencing for the reserve. From the federal government, they've contributed just over $312,000, and from the Victorian government, just over $197,000. Construction is expected to be completed early in the upcoming winter netball season. The works will build on major improvements at the reserve in recent years, including change rooms and social facilities. This will help to further secure the future of the Anarchy Football and Netball Club, which plays such an important and central role for the Anarchy community.
Thank you, Sarah. And the next one's actually about community grants, which I understand there's quite a lot of interest from members of the community actually for this particular meeting. But what we do want to talk about is our community grants program that we've just recently signed off on. And that's our annual $3.5 million grant program that we do have in the city of Greater Geelong. And there were a number of successful groups in the northern suburbs that applied for that competitive grant program and were successful. They included the Corio Model Railway Club, which actually received $9,246 to install roof-mounted solar panels. We also had the Bellpost Hill Football and Netball Club based at Myers Reserve, where there was a $350,000 grant to actually assist replacement of lighting at that site location. And I've already mentioned North Geelong Warriors Football Club. They actually received a $255,000 grant for lighting. Construction is actually underway for a deck at the Lara Swimming Club, and unfortunately the roof actually blew off that particular building in the last 2 weeks when we had that mini tornado that actually came through Lara, so I hope they're getting a new roof and a deck now. Also at Myers Reserve, the Geelong Rangers Soccer Club did receive a grant for $40,200 to actually start building and design for their new clubroom facilities that they have as well too. And a different type of project for us that we actually funded was Form Flow, which is based in North Shore, and they received a $25,000 grant to commercialise a new approach for affordable and sustainable housing. And I do notice tonight there are some questions from the community about Council's commitment towards social and affordable housing. It was really good to see that that grant money was actually going to a different sector as opposed to what is normally dominated by sporting and other clubs. Not that there is anything wrong with that, but it was really good to see that a competitive grant came through from a non-sporting organisation.
So we'll move on now to our Youth Council. So we have 12 young people passionate about making a difference in the community who've been recently inducted into the 2024 Youth Council. And Timu was elected by her peers to lead the Youth Council as Junior Mayor, and she's one of our Windermere Ward Youth Council members, so it's great to have that representation from the North in that position. Supporting her in this role is the Deputy Junior Mayor, Mercy. Acting as an advisory committee to Council, the Youth Council consists of 12 members aged between 12 and 17. And a number of us on Council had the privilege of sitting in that induction session where they had that election for the Junior Mayor and Deputy Junior Mayor, and it's 12 very articulate, very passionate young people, and I think they certainly give us energy and inspire us as councillors to keep doing what we're doing as well. So the Youth Council meets monthly. They'll discuss important issues such as mental health, climate change, diversity and inclusion, and they'll make reports back to Council throughout 2024.
Thank you, Sarah. And before we conclude, we do just want to make comment about this particular reform. In the last couple of weeks, the Minister for Local Government has actually announced major changes to the electoral system in Geelong. And at the present time, we have 4 wards with multi-member wards, councillors in each of those wards. We're returning back to what many people know in the past is single wards. So in other words, what will happen is that one particular electorate will have one councillor only. And it is a change from how we've operated over the last 8 years in Geelong. And it will be very interesting to see what actually happens. What some of the comments I do want to just make for people from the northern suburbs is that Lara and Anarchy and our rural areas all the way to Finesford are forming a new single ward called the Yuyangs ward. And just to repeat some history, in 2018, Councillor Gresbeck and myself, with the endorsement of the council, actually put a request to the local government minister to actually change the name of Windermere ward to Yuyangs ward. So it actually is really encouraging to see that after about 6 years, that's actually happened. The community certainly relates to Yuyangs. It is the most dominant geographical feature in that particular ward. A new ward is being created which embraces this area, which is predominantly Corio and Norlane and North Shore, and will be called Corio Ward. And a new ward is being introduced called Hamlin Heights, which will cover the Bellpost Hill, Bell Park, Hamlin Heights and Herne Hill area. So for those from the Bell Park Sports Club, I think you will end up in the new Hamlin Heights ward electorate. And the rest of Geelong has actually been broken up into single wards as well too. There are some anomalies. An example is Roseville is actually with Lara, so it won't be with its natural community of interest. And you also see that Clifton Springs and other areas are actually split in two. So it will take a bit of time for the community to understand the new ward structures. Certainly what I encourage you is to understand the new local government system that's coming in October 2024, and I encourage all of you, if you are interested to stand as a local councillor, to actually start that process now and consider the ward that you would actually like to run in, and please make it a competitive process for the community, because the community deserves the opportunity to choose the best candidate in each ward. Thank you. And Mr. Mayor, on behalf of Sarah and I, that concludes our presentation. And now we can get on to the real important stuff, which is question time and then discussion of the items on the agenda.
Absolutely. Thank you very much to the Windermere Ward councillors for the presentation. And I'll just end the end note here when you're talking about candidates upcoming council elections. It is worthwhile noting that City of Greater Geelong is a signatory to the Equality of 2024 for council elections for outcomes of gender equity. All right, thank you very much, Windermere Ward councillors. Actually, it was remiss of me not to also acknowledge that whilst we do have multiple community leaders here today, to acknowledge former councillor Carly Grisbeck and former councillor Jan Farrell, who I believe is here as well. I'll now get started with the process going forward. So, councillors, I'll be asking for strict adherence to speaking limits, time limits for tonight's meeting. In terms of apologies and leaves of absence, Councillor Contell is away on approved leave, and Councillor Maloney is a late apology for tonight's meetings. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest to be noted in relation to tonight's agenda? If any conflicts do become known throughout the meeting, please raise them with me immediately. In terms of confirmation of minutes, can I please have a mover and a seconder to confirm the minutes of the council meeting held on the 30th of January 2024? Moved Deputy Mayor Aiken, seconded Councillor Wilkinson. Thank you. I do have to move those actually. All those in favour? Thank you. All those against? Excellent. All right, public question and submission time. Now, this is specifically a segment of the meeting that is available for question and submissions rather than as a forum for discussion. In accordance with our policy, we'll set aside a set time, 45 minutes for question time, providing for each person who has pre-submitted a question or submission to either address council for 3 minutes per question or submission, with no more than 2 questions asked or submissions made per person. Questions and submissions, which were provided in writing prior to the meeting, will be considered first. So I'm going to go through the list now and just read out all the names of the submitters and the subject matter for the public record, and then I'll go through the list again and ask people to come up one at a time to the table up the front here and ask their questions or make said submissions. So we've received pre-submitted questions or submissions from Michael Leslie in regards to St Leonard's Master Plan, Jared Crow, bike lanes, Charles Street, Lara Incinerator, environmental contamination concerns, Barry White, Serendip Sanctuary and Advocacy, John Winkler, Kayama Drive, Lara, Marilyn Petit, Lara Traffic Management Funding, Sandy Creek Road, Marcus McEwen, Funding Anzac Day Dawn Service, Jane Compston, Lara Incinerator and Waste Management, Jan Farrell, LGBTQIA+ Action Plan, Paul Brady, Councillor Priority Projects, Community Facilities, Dale Purcell, Windsor Park Master Plan, Roland Bone, Windsor Park Master Plan, Joanna Duncan, Lara Incinerator Traffic Management, David Jackson, Northern Aquatic and Community Hub, Liz Bonner, Social Housing Plan, Emily Flynn, Social Housing Plan, Simon Reeves, Crow Norlane Structure Plan, Lorraine Kulik, Beckley Park Stadium, Greg Wilson, Kevin Hoffman Walk-in Lara, Project Funding, Jean Nell, Tree Management Engagement, Louis DeCoca, Tree Management Engagement, and Jenny Knox, Tree Management Engagement. Now, before I ask people to come up, I will note there has been a change in tonight's agenda, specifically with that last one, in terms of tree management. Item 2.2 on the report, planning controls for trees on private land. Item 2 in the recommendation has changed to the said wording. Will engage directly with community organisations and the broader community to explore options available to strengthen tree protection on private land. I'll repeat that, being item 2 is now will engage directly with community organisations and the broader community to explore options available to strengthen tree protection on private land. I mention that now instead of in the reports because it directly relates to some submitted questions. Right, can we please have a show of hands of everyone whose name I read out who is here to ask a question or make a submission? Excellent, good numbers. Right, I'll go directly down the list. As I read it before, is Michael Leslie here? Michael Leslie. Move on to Jared Crow. Jared Crow. Charles Street. There we are, sir. How are you, Charles?
Very good. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council.
So we'll just ask everybody to make sure they can speak into the microphone so
Yes.
it gets picked up. Thank you, Charles.
That might be better. Yes, so I have two questions relating to the Lara Big Incinerator project recently approved by the EPA. So the first one about the Ramsar wetlands nearby. So we understand that there are several Ramsar wetlands within the city of Greater Geelong, and we're particularly interested in the Lime Burners Bay Ramsar wetland at the mouth of Hovels Creek. We note that the Lara Big Incinerator stack is just 4,000 metres from the centre of the Lime Burners Bay Ramsar wetland and well within the range of its plume. We also note that the groundwater at the incinerator site at 164 to 200 McManus Road, Lara, is contaminated. And I'm quoting here from the consultant's report. Groundwater concentration of boron, hexavalent chromium, copper, nickel, silver and zinc were reported to exceed the adopted criteria for water-dependent ecosystems and species. That's from Jacobs, dated 2020. Jacobs are the consultants to the project, engineering consultants. Of greatest concern, of course, is hexavalent chromium. Quoting again, construction of the proposed EFW plant would involve the excavation and removal of approximately 178,000 cubic metres of subsurface material. That's 69 Olympic swimming pools worth. From a maximum anticipated depth of 11 metres below ground level, again from the consultants. Of course, this hole will fill with groundwater, which must be pumped out, probably continuously, during construction. Site surface waters and groundwater flow into Hovels Creek by default. What action is Council taking to protect from contamination? What action is Council taking to ensure the Hovels Creek and the Limeburners Bay Ramsar wetlands are protected from contamination by the incinerator plume and by contaminated groundwaters from the Lara Big Incinerator construction site? So that's question one.
Yep.
Do you want me to go on to question
No,
two?
I'll answer your question one and then
please.
do question two. We'll separate them out. So thank you, again for your questions, Charles, and your continuing advocacy on this item. So appreciating that the City will be providing advice as a recommendation referral authority, as you know. This development will still be required to satisfy all applicable environmental planning regulations as per any development of land in Victoria. So whilst the EPA does hold responsibility for ensuring that state and federal environmental legislation is adhered to, they're the enforcement body for that, which includes removal of prescribed waste and discharge from the site, the Council's role is really in terms of a referral body that if we are made aware of any contradictions of these regulatory guidelines, or if any contraband is coming out there, we refer to matters to them where identified through our normal business operations. So we have capacity to notify and request cleanups to be happen if breaches are made, but we are not the breach cleanup authority ourselves.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
A second question?
Please.
Thank you. Excuse me. Normally, Council has decision-making powers regarding almost every construction project within the City of Greater Geelong borders. This is a normal part of good local government practice. Not so in the particular case of the Lara Big Incinerator project. Council has been relegated to the status of referral authority only, with no decision-making powers. There must be a document, a legal instrument, or perhaps more than one, which has removed Council's normal decision-making powers in relation to the Lara Big Incinerator project or projects of that type. Would Council please provide us with a copy of the said legal instruments or internet links to the same, please?
Yep, absolutely. And these will be sent to you, Charles, but the exact part of legislation is in accordance with clause 72.07-1 for all planning schemes statewide. It is noted that the Minister for Planning is responsible authority for the matters under Division 1, 1A, 2 and 3 of Part 4 of the Planning and Environment Act 1987 for approval of or being satisfied with matters in relation to use and development of land for a energy generation facility with an installed capacity of 1 megawatt or greater. So that's sort of the part of the Planning Act that refers to her. There are other instruments that when Geelong City Council is not actually the final approval authority for members or items within our municipality. There's bodies such as the Geelong Authority, which makes recommendations straight to the Planning Minister for other large-scale developments under different categories. Whilst not uncommon, and unfortunately it does exist around the area.
Thank you very much for that. I'm glad I didn't go looking for it because I never, ever would have found it.
Yeah, that'll be sent to you in writing, so you've got that there. Thank you, Charles.
Thank you very much.
Cheers. All right, is Barry White here this evening? There we are. How are you, Barry?
Very well, thank you, Mayor.
Excellent.
And good evening, councillors and management, and of course yourself. And I join with others in congratulating Council on this wonderful facility. And I must say, we're looking forward to getting one out at Mara. So put on the pencils. My question is about the future of Serendip Sanctuary. And I'm presenting this on behalf of the Lara Care Group, but also the Lara Community Network, which comprises 24 organisations, community organisations and service organisations. And we have been delegated to represent the wider community on this particular issue. From previous meetings, most councillors will be aware of developments impacting on Serendip Sanctuary and previous action that is taken, including correspondence from the Mayor on at least 2 occasions to support the sanctuary, and particularly the return of the wildlife displays, which are, or were at least, its central attraction. Serendip is in fact a unique site with major conservation, education, community and tourism value. All of those things are represented at Serendip and have been important contributions to the community. And it really is an important asset, not just for the Lara region, but for the Greater Geelong region. And this is a point that we want to underline. This is an iconic community and regional resource and an attraction which should be invested in, not destroyed, as is presently the direction being taken under Parks Victoria's management. And as in fact was identified in a Freedom of Information requested business plan, 2020 business plan, that was only made available to us in June of 2023. My question is in 2 parts. Specifically, will Council contact the Minister for Tourism's office, Steve Demopoulos, and request a meeting to include his advisors, council representatives and community representatives to discuss the future of this invaluable Geelong region asset? The second part of the question, will Council also contact the Executive Director Tourism Greater Geelong and the Bellarine to request that she becomes more proactive in supporting and promoting this asset through her role on the stakeholder reference group of the You Yangs Precinct Master Plan? There has in fact been very little evidence of any such support to date. So they are the 2 questions.
Yeah, thank you very much, Barry. And I believe you're part of that stakeholder reference group as well, so thank you for your work on that. So as you know, as you have pointed out, Tourism Greater Geelong and the Bellarine Sustainable Destination Master Plan does specifically call out Serendip Sanctuary upgrades as one of the top 20 demand-driving projects, supporting the allocation of funds and resources to improve the visitor experience. As such, makes it a priority for the entire council. So Parks Victoria is engaging with the stakeholder reference group, as you've mentioned, this is for everyone's information, with an $11 million project to upgrade the You Yangs Regional Park and Serendip Sanctuary. And that includes representatives from Tourism Greater Geelong and the Bellarine, Wadong Traditional Owners Aboriginal Corporation, Zoos Victoria, as well as a range of community user groups and stakeholders. The City understands that the group has made positive contributions to the direction of the project, and it is progressing towards some excellent outcomes for the community, which I look forward to seeing. These are in terms of upgraded facilities, new experiences, they'll support the strategic goal for Serendip Sanctuary. It's my understanding that the Tourism Greater Geelong and the Bellarine Executive Director has been an active participant in the stakeholder reference group, contributing to discussions on how to prioritise the $11 million funding and adding tourism perspective to conversations about the direction of the sanctuary. However, we can always have further conversations. In regards to writing to the Minister, I did recently write to the Minister, Demopoulos, in regards to events in Geelong and attractions around tourism and whatnot, requesting a meeting. I can certainly add that to the agenda and request that we do have a meeting on this one as well to discuss the progression and how we are finalising towards that goal of that $11 million project upgrade. Barry.
Thank you very much for that response. We have attempted to make contact with the Minister's office. Unfortunately, it's been hand-passed back to Parks Victoria and we've got the same result that we've got for the last 3 years, which is not answering any of the questions that were raised. And with due respect to the role of Tourism Greater Geelong and the Stakeholder Reference Group, unfortunately, the conclusions that you're referring to, we don't share. I mean, I think a lot more work needs to be done on behalf of Geelong to actually represent what's going on there.
I understand. No, we've been told that the Minister is in fact very busy, but we're going to continue trying to get some more ear time, if we may. Thank you for your question, Barry.
Excuse me, Mr Mayor, can I just follow up?
Please.
Can I just follow up, Mr Mayor? If the Executive Director of Tourism for Greater Geelong and Bellarine is actually representing the City of Greater Geelong, is it possible to receive update reports then after those stakeholder meetings that are transparent and available to the public as well too, to actually see if that person actually or position is representing the City of Greater Geelong? I think it is appropriate that the feedback actually be provided to the council.
Yeah, well, they represent the board, which is made up of a City of Greater Geelong representative.
Sorry?
Well, they represent the board of Tourism Greater Geelong and the Ballerina, which has a representative of myself.
They don't. Sorry, Mr. Beer, to correct you. The position was actually made available for the City of Greater Geelong, and we did have Jonathan Daly representing the City of Greater Geelong as the appropriate officer. With his resignation, a decision was made internally to make Tracy Carter the replacement person. So I would certainly encourage that if Tracy is representing the City of Greater Geelong, let's seek clarification on that then, and if she is, can there be reports and updates from those meetings to give confidence that the concerns are being represented. The council did pass a notice of motion that was actually presented by former councillor Gresbeck, and that is still a governance position of what the city actually is in relation to Serendip, and it does cover ongoing participation in the stakeholder meeting. Yeah.
Yep, we can take that one on notice and sort it out.
Yeah, thank you for those responses. And I will say again, there is a lack of transparency about this whole process, and that's our biggest criticism.
We'll get to the bottom of it. Thank you, Barry.
Good.
All right, John Winkler. Is John Winkler here today? How are you, John?
Okay, my question is in relation to the Kiama Drive drainage upgrade project, which is currently on hold. The residents of Kiama Drive in Lara have been waiting patiently now for 40 years since we first had water above floor level through our homes, and it's been a long and rocky road since. We've lived through an ongoing stream of flood studies, 5 in total, and they've all confirmed that the issue is in Kiama Drive and they agree on the need. And over the years, these have been followed by a series of solid commitments from council to resolve the problem, and there have been 4 now. And each promise was individually celebrated by the community at the time. However, the first 3 of these promises resulted in false starts and nothing happened, and it was pretty devastating. A great deal of money has been spent though. For example, the most recent 2020 Lara flood study alone at $500,000, the project planning completed last year at $300,000, and the 2014 council purchase of the property required at 71 McClelland Avenue was likely north of both of those. And there's been a lot more, but unfortunately not a spade in the ground. We believe that far more money has been spent already than the amount currently on hold in the budget to actually do the work and realise the gains. And sadly, some original residents have since passed away, and others now, we've just learned, are about to go into nursing homes and will never see this realised. The rest of us continue to wait on the delivery of what is now our 4th promise, but it's currently on hold. And given the history and the current upheavals and other growing demands on council, we're now becoming extremely concerned where this may or may not be heading. And it wouldn't be ideal waiting for another $300K to be spent on replanning the detail because it got out of date. And I do think this is a great facility, $65 million to get people wet. We'd just like to see our $1 million to keep dry. Could council please confirm to our community that the Kiama Drive drainage upgrade project will proceed as promised when the budget tap reopens, and either way, we would appreciate an on-site visit from our new Director Infrastructure to see firsthand and get up to speed with our situation there. So the invite's there, James. Thank you.
Thank you, John, for your questions to Council. As you very well know, this financial year, a vegetation assessment and a preliminary cultural heritage assessment have been completed. The design phase of the project is 90% complete, with the finalisation of the mechanical and electrical design for the pump system outstanding. Upon finalisation of these design works, we will have a quantity surveyor re-evaluate the work, ensuring the project is accurately priced during budget discussions. So it is really, as we enter now budget discussions for the financial year ahead of us, that will determine the timing and schedule of works for the Kiama Drive, Lipson Drive stormwater upgrades. There are certainly many vulnerable areas of our community in relation to stormwater impacts, and we will ensure that any investment is directed towards areas of greatest need. It will certainly, as we understand, very heartbreaking for the Windermere ward councillors and local residents when the Kiama Drive project had been put on hold due to severe financial constraints last year, which were unforeseen by all of us, which is why it was so devastating. However, a lot of work has been done to ensure that we are in a better fiscal situation going forwards, and Windermere Ward councillors are pushing for it fiercely. All councillors are aware of the Claymore Drive project, and it is very high on the priority list.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr Mayor.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you for the comments that you've acknowledged, the difficulty that the community and disappointment that the community is actually having, and John as the leader on this particular project. The saddest thing for the community is that this project was publicly announced, it was going ahead, it was actually part of the budget process. There were over 50 public submissions in the 22-23 budget period, which helped garner the decision that the council made to actually put it into its 4-year forward estimates of $700 million worth of projects. The difficulty that the community and myself and Sarah are now struggling with is to understand the priority of where the project actually is. It's not listed in any future budget estimates, and how do we actually get it into the budget estimates is certainly the understanding the community needs to have, and also Councillor Hathaway and myself. I should also make mention that the former director, Guy Wilson-Brown, actually made a public statement at the public hearing associated with the budget submissions that were made by over the 50 people that attended specifically for this project. And the director actually did promise that the organisation would continually look at the federal government funding opportunities under the local community roads projects to actually see if this project could actually be funded. I noticed that the first opportunity that has occurred in the last 6 months, Community Drive was not in those list of projects, but I encourage the new director of this particular area to have a look at that funding source and other funding sources to try to see if this project can be delivered. The community has waited over 15 years for this works to be undertaken, and to actually have it listed in a budget and then have it removed from a budget process and then not have any confidence about whether it will be returned in the future is causing anguish, distress and lack of confidence in the decision making of the council.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, John.
I'll see you out there, James.
Marilyn Petit. I apologise if I... Petit? Petit, apologies. Apologies, Marilyn. How are you?
I'm good.
Excellent.
You. Could I just say, welcome to councillors. Thank you for coming out again to the north to hear our concerns, and it's wonderful to be here in this extraordinary building. So well done to everyone. It's just great. And could I also acknowledge ex-councillor Grisbick, who worked so hard towards this, and also a lot of the other projects we've seen up on the screen tonight. Councillors, and quite a few of you, should be aware of the 2019-29 Lara Traffic Management Plan, which was first proposed in 2017 and approved in 2020. In that plan, the upgrade of Sandy Creek Road was identified for short-term high priority. This is to enable diversion of heavy trucks from the sand quarries away from the townships of Lara and the Yuyang's Tourist and Recreational Precinct. Now, it's now 2024, and we're still waiting for this to happen. And the road, I can tell you, remains dangerous. I see it daily. This issue has been raised with council many times by myself, you'd probably say ad nauseum, and the Lara Care Group, community stakeholders, including the quarry industry. Time and time again it has been put up for funding and knocked back due to funding shortages. Now, we understand federal government money was made available for road development, and although plans for Sandy Creek Road upgrade were completed and ready to go, council diverted those funds to other non-road related projects. If that's not true, I'm happy for somebody to, come and confirm that case. It is time the council meets its community commitments and allocate funds as a matter of urgency. And I ask you, councillors, what is the point of a traffic management plan developed in consultation with the community over I can say thousands and thousands of hours from your offices and our community if it's simply continually ignored by you. Now, my question is, can you promise us when the Sandy Creek Road works will be done? Simple question.
Thank you for your question, Marilyn. The City certainly notes your concerns regarding the lack of action to upgrade of Sandy Creek Road. As you know, Sandy Creek Road is managed as an unsealed road in accordance with our road management plan and was last graded in November last year. The next full grading of the road will occur within the next 4 weeks. So the City does confirm that Sandy Creek resealing and upgrading works were acknowledged as an opportunity for the City to strengthen the road network within the Lara Traffic Management Plan of 2019 to 2029. Now, whilst we do invest funds in creating these plans, not always does it mean that when the results will be financially easy for the City to accomplish, as is considered considerable funds. You do right that federal government doesn't make funds for roads available. However, the latest, and for many years now, they've been combined as in a local roads and community infrastructure fund. So monies gained by councils are eligible for all those, not diverted away from one source to the other. So to date, grant opportunities have been sought by the City, but unfortunately have not been successful to help us co-fund this development. And at this point, construction funding has not been allocated for Sandy Creek Road due to the large value of works. We'll certainly continue to look for external state and federal funding opportunities from the other levels of government or other bodies to assist in completing the works. But as it stands, unfortunately, I cannot give you a date that we have for it to start due to lack of resources.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That is the same story that we've been given time after time after time.
Indeed.
And I think I'll be in a nursing home too before.
Well, I'll throw to Deputy Mayor Aiken who has comment.
Marilyn, thank you again. For those officers that are new to the City of Greater Geelong and those councillors that have only joined us in the last 12 months, this is probably about the 11th time that you've actually presented to us to actually draw attention to this particular project. And I commend your tenacity and your resilience. And in fact, just to add some bit of information and background, Sandy Creek Road is actually where the Ford Proving Ground is actually accessed from it. And I've actually received an email this week by Fords who are quite concerned that there is talk that if the road isn't upgraded soon, there will be restrictions placed on the road in terms of what vehicles can actually enter into Sandy Creek Road. Now, if those restrictions are actually brought in, it will put at jeopardy the Ford Proving Ground, and it would be an absolute travesty if it was because the City of Greater Geelong and federal and state governments could not actually fund a project that's been listed under the Lara Traffic Management Plan and has been lobbied by the community for a very long time. What a consequence of Sandy Creek Road also being deemed not to be able to be used for trucks and other vehicles as well too, is that that community out there actually has a lot of quarry trucks that actually use this road. Now, if that road gets stopped as a traffic opportunity for those trucks, it will move into the more localised roads and it will actually significantly impact on the tourism and the other benefits for the community that live in that particular area. So I certainly do encourage that the new executive leadership team and the new CEO actually do try to look at opportunities to try to see why this is a priority for the community and in fact why it is a priority for Ford Australia as well too, and actually see if they can actually identify funding and not actually suggest that if you wait and be patient, something will happen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. You've summed it up really quite well. And I'll just say, just quickly, it won't take up any more time.
Well, Marilyn, these are for pre-submitted questions, not just,
yes,
as I said, a conversation backwards and forwards.
Major film crews use that area. I'm talking about major international film crews. The road is so dangerous. If somebody cleans up, there's going to be egg over faces because it's not a good scenario. But
thank you for bringing that to our attention. Was Marcus McEwen here this evening? How are you, Marcus?
How you going? Good evening, everyone. My name's Marcus McEwen. I'm the president of the Lara RSL, a veteran of 12 and a half years in the Royal Australian Navy. My father was a veteran, as were my two grandfathers. Anzac Day is one of the most important commemorative events in the Australian calendar. And right now, the Lara RSL are in a position where we have to make a decision whether we go ahead with our dawn service commemoration, which last year was attended by about 4,500 people. But we're in a position where do I, as the President, make a decision to withdraw the $4,500 from Veterans Welfare Funds in order to put that event on, or do I seek other funding options? I've approached the Council on 3 separate occasions and been told that there's nothing available with no explanation. So my question is, can I get some explanation as to why the Council don't see Anzac Day as an important event in our calendar?
Thank you, Marcus. I'll answer your first question, which is that the Council does see Anzac Day as an important day on our national calendar. In regards to funding, the City does strive to have a fair and equitable funding programs across the entire municipality for all community programs and events. The City has funded the Eastern Beach services for the past few years now through grants fundings, which are applied for once or twice a year. However, the community events grants and other City grant programs have today not received any funding applications for the 23-24 competitive round for any 2024 Anzac Day services. Officers are happy to assist with grant applications for the 24-25 year Anzac Day services. However, I do note that you say you have made contact on 3 separate times, so perhaps we can follow this offline to see what's happened there and how we've come to this situation.
I'd appreciate that.
Thank you, Marcus.
Thank you.
All right, Jane Compston.
Jane's not here, but can I read hers?
You're Jane's proxy?
Yep.
All right. What was your name, if I may?
I'm Joanna Duncan.
Joanna Duncan, thank you.
Okay, so Jane asked a question at the last council meeting about concerns about building the incinerator in Lara, and she says, thank you for your reply, which included the wording. As part of the process of consideration to council, along with concerned residents, has voiced its concerns over the Minister of Planning about the proposed application through a formal letter to the Minister. Has Council raised its concerns to the Minister of Planning again since January the 30th?
Thank you, Joanna, for reading out Jane's question. So we've not reiterated our concerns again with the Minister for Planning since the Council meeting on the 30th of January. However, myself and the CEO did have a meeting with a local representative, Ella George, State Member for Parliament, just today, where we discussed ways forward in terms of the processes, whether inside or out, that Council can continue to advocate to the Minister for Planning on this topic. And what I mean processes inside or out, being if there will be opportunities for formal re-engagement with Council, or if it's better if we just continue with direct letter writing. So discussions have been taking place today, and we'll be progressing those further.
Okay, thank you.
I believe Jane, sorry, is there James Compston here today?
I'm his proxy.
Thank you very much, Charles.
Yeah. Thank you for the opportunity to, excuse me, read James's question. So James says, I gratefully acknowledge that the Council has stated that its strategic plans for waste management do not involve incineration and that the Council does not plan on using incineration. I commend the Randwick City Council's unambiguous public display of its rejection of waste incineration as depicted in the photo sent earlier to CEO Miss Ali Wasty. So you would already have that picture. I asked the Council if the COGG would similarly adorn at least some of the city's rubbish collection trucks, publicly indicating COGG's opposition to and rejection of the waste incinerator proposed for McManus Road, Lara. Thank you for this opportunity. Sincerely, from James Compston.
Well, thank you, James, and thank you, Charles, for reading that out. So our curbside collection and associated infrastructure is in Geelong operated by an external contractor. As per previous questions, we'll continue to raise concerns and advocate during appropriate channels. However, we can't instruct this external contractor to adorn different markings or words or whatnot on the sides of their vehicles, I'm afraid, at this point. But thank you for seeing that through.
Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. Jan Farrell. How are you, Jan?
Good evening, councillors. Thank you. Congratulations on your investment in the northern suburbs. This is amazing. I ask the following questions as the co-convener of the Rainbow Local Government Team, a campaign auspiced by the Victorian Pride Lobby to encourage councils to work with their local LGBTIQA communities to ensure their municipalities are welcoming and inclusive. Rainbow Local Government attended the Geelong Pride March last week and collected signatures for a petition that Councillor Hathaway will be presenting tonight. It was great to see so many councillors in attendance, 7 of the 11 of you. Congratulations. We saw you march beside the Geelong LGBTIQA community and their allies. A year ago, I attended your February meeting at the Potato Shed and asked, will Council commit to developing a standalone LGBTIQA action plan to advance LGBTIQA inclusion for employees and community members in line with similar plans at other councils across the state and in consultation with Council's LGBTIQA Advisory Committee? A year ago, I was provided with a response from the Mayor about Council's commitment to the Rainbow Ready Roadmap. A council is aware that the Rainbow Ready Roadmap is simply an audit tool that is used as a stepping stone to an actual community-driven LGBTIQA action plan, a plan which is long overdue in Geelong, given that 8 of the current councillors promised to deliver one almost 4 years ago in 2020.
Thank you for the first question, Jan. I do believe councillors know there's a difference between a ready roadmap and an action plan.
Thank you. Geelong Rainbow Inc. organised a wonderful festival last week in Johnson Park that included a Pride March. As the councillors who attended are aware, a decision was made by your organisation to withdraw the official council contingent of councillors and officers from the march due to supposed issues with a permit, even though the local police supported the march and were there in numbers on the day. Given that council's decision to withdraw from the march created some ill will with Geelong Rainbow Inc. and others, will council commit to providing better support to community organisations in general and Geelong Rainbow Inc. in particular to ensure that these kinds of events are not put at risk in future by overly bureaucratic protocols and procedures?
Yeah, thank you for your question, Jan. And it was fantastic to see you at our last September meeting at the Potato Shed when you asked that initial question. I was also pleased to see that there was...
It was February. It was a year ago.
Oh, no, I looked up the recordings that are publicly available just earlier today, in September. But it was great to see such presence by the council and councillors at the rally over the weekend. I had the honour of attending the Wellington vs St Leonard's inaugural Pride Match, which was a fantastic show up by many of the community out there. I know there were members of the Wellington Cricket Club here today as well. So Geelong Rainbow was informed, or they did inform Council on the 14th of February that the parade was to be changed to a rally and approvals had not been received by Victorian Police. The City will work closely with event organisers Rainbow Inc. in future to ensure that the march component of the festival is formalised with necessary permits to better support attendees' safety, road closure, alternative public transport routes and traffic control. Now, the City will gladly support Rainbow Inc. in the coming months to begin preparing early for the 2025 Geelong Rainbow Festival, as we like all of our community to be closely aligned for what I'm sure will be a fantastic event. The development of a dedicated LGBTQIA+ action plan is not in the plan of work for the next financial year, but may be considered in the future. So the Victorian Government has produced the Rainbow Ready Roadmap, as I'm sure you're aware, as a set of resources for Victorian rural and regional communities to build on LGBTQIA+ inclusion. This was developed through extensive consultation with LGBTQIA+ communities, including Geelong, and is used to inform our future priorities. And of course, the City is proud to support diversity and inclusion, including our LGBTQIA+ community at many events.
Mr. Mayor, can I make a comment?
Yes, Chair, absolutely.
Thank you. Jan, thanks for your question. I do want to acknowledge that there's perhaps some disputed facts and timelines of events, which we don't need to get into, but I think the positive takeaway from this is the commitment from the City to support Geelong Rainbow earlier in advance for the next event and make it an even bigger and better event. And certainly there's been some discussion with members of the LGBTI Advisory Committee about how the Advisory Committee can have a debrief and also support Geelong Rainbow going forward. So I think those are two positive things that have come out of this. In terms of the Rainbow Action Plan, there's nothing in the budget yet, but I just want to acknowledge that we're having those discussions now. So nothing's ruled in or out yet. And yeah, certainly the advocacy we're seeing tonight in terms of the petition being tabled will help going forward.
Thank you,
Councillor
Councillor.
Hathaway. Paul Brady. Oh, Brady. How are you, Paul?
Good, thank you. Good evening.
Cool.
The other two boys aren't here. They're probably out collecting something or whatever. But anyway,
Which one's the other two boys you're referring to?
Dale
Sorry.
and Rowley.
Okay.
So I can either do the whole 6 questions as a proxy, or I can blend them into 2.
Yeah, maybe we'll limit two. They're very similar, I imagine.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah,
So
thank you.
basically, North Shore's had a master plan on the books since pre-2012, and we've been getting closer and closer to getting it, and we were a priority probably 18 months ago, and then it all turned to pear-shaped. So we're trying to understand why it's not going to happen now by the look of it, and we want to know why the priorities keep changing every time there's a change in council or council personnel. It just doesn't make sense. So we're working pretty hard to get this done, and we get the rug pulled out every time. So there's one.
Yep, I understand your concerns there, Paul. So this is regarding to the Windsor Park Facility Development Plan, the larger scale of investment that was, planned out for that area there. So the Facilities Development Plan built on the previous master plan for the reserve and details the scope of work, so everyone knows, of a value of roughly $6.5 million, with 18 funding opportunities, including pavilion extensions, sealed car park, coaches boxes, player shelters, community garden space, skate park, and female-friendly facilities, which are important, and cricket nets as well. So the state government's election commitment of $2 million is certainly still there and will be used to commence construction on the pavilion. Further implementation of the master plan had to be paused in line with Council's large spending pause last year. However, projects that are co-funded with the state or federal governments are very high on the list going forwards. That was a commitment that we made, that when there was co-funding for projects, that will be the top of Council's list going forwards. We are re-engaging in our budget process now for the next financial year coming, sir. So I can't give you any sort of commitments, but it is still at one of the top of the lists for the future budget.
No, that's not the understanding, though. The understanding is it's gone. It's out. Now,
That's
there are other things that have overtaken it. And
Paul, after interject there, that is, I had a meeting with the MP for Lara today.
Yeah.
It is not gone, sir. It is certainly still on the table and being discussed.
Well,
the $2 million is committed.
$2 million's on the table.
The $2 million's on the table,
on the
and
table.
how Council will further fund its parts, we are still working through. So this project is in no way cancelled. It's been how do we get the funds available to make it happen.
Right, okay. So the second part of the question really is that we thought it was overestimated anyway, and we wanted to have a review of those costs with a view of perhaps doing it over 2 years rather than 1 year and to try and get it on the way. And look, we don't have any issue with other clubs, if you want to fund Elderslie Reserve or whatever like that, we don't care about that. It's we want to get what needs to be done. We haven't had tube I've spent there for 35 years, and every other club around is getting it. So how are we going to get this off the ground?
Yeah, I appreciate it, Paul. What you're referring to there in terms of other funds is, what grants have come up from the state or other levels of government that council does pursue when they become available. We're in discussions with the state and with federal governments as to what other grant opportunities can be available for the Windsor Park Master Plan there, the Facilities Development Plan, and how we may pursue them and how council can, put in its fair share, as I said before. It's definitely not off the table, sir. We understand that there are multiple clubs across the municipality that need co-funded development, but we are still pursuing this one.
So
with
where are we
wholehearted
on the
leisure.
list? Where are we?
There's no list of 1 to 5 who is the top one.
Well, there is.
It's who can we get is eligible for funding at any time and off the ranks. Deputy Mayor.
Mr Mayor, I've got an important question, and maybe the CEO should probably answer it. The question, one of the questions that was actually asked, and it's interesting that the community's now feeling this because the councils are as well too, and that question was about with changes in personnel, how do we keep consistency regardless of organisational change? Because that's actually what the community's feeling, and I know the council group is expressing that as well too, Mr Mayor. So is there an opportunity for the CEO to give confidence to the community that is being addressed under the new structures and the new personnel that actually have been put in place? Because the frustrations are actually coming out from the community that an officer may have had knowledge and ownership of an issue, and then once that person actually finishes up with the city or changes the role or responsibility, that project seems to no longer have a champion for it. And most of the questions that are being asked tonight are actually been around a very long time and been working with officers, but are seem to being lost because that person is actually no longer with the city or has moved into another role within the city.
If you'd like to.
That's exactly what's happened, yeah.
Hey, Paul.
And we were told if we got the $2 million funding from the state, we'll be okay, everything will be clear. Now, we've gone and got that, and it's been sitting there for 2 years and nothing.
You got this, sir, and it's not quite nothing. I mean, the
Well,
contracting agreements between ourselves and Sport and Recreation Victoria have been going back and forth, and scopes for the pavilion have been sorted out, and they are progressing. They are ready to go with final sign-off from the funding agreements. It's the other ones which we have to secure the funding for. But in terms of the new organisational structure and how that will benefit the organisation, CEO?
Thank you. Through the Mayor, with any large organisation, there are going to be movements of personnel. Appreciating your frustration, I'm not sure who you've been in contact with, but you can absolutely email me tomorrow or telephone me and I will pass that on. I will give you my direct number. That is not a problem. And we've also got a fantastic advocacy unit in council where I think your issues would have been raised before, so we will follow that up. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Paul.
All right. Thank you.
If Dale and Roland aren't here, I'll go to Joanna Duncan. Oh, Joanna.
Me again. Okay, mine's about the traffic impact that the incinerator, either building and operation, will have on the township of Lara. During construction, the incinerator traffic impacts are a real concern. Jacobs estimates 300 to 400 one-way trips of full-time staff in light vehicles, 300 one-way heavy vehicle, and 10 oversized, over-dimensional vehicles. That's just construction. They're going to be using Forest Road, Bacchus Marsh Road, Down Hills Road into Production Way and Broderick Road. Now, those roads are absolutely not going to cope with any traffic. Production Way isn't even there yet. During operation, there will be 200,000 trips annually, carrying 50% of waste in 26-metre B doubles, 100,000 trips annually in 25% of the waste in 19-metre semi-trailer bulk haul containers, and 100,000 trips with 25% of the further waste in council refuse bins. Now, on top of the 400 to 500 vehicles per year of consumables, so the traffic impact and the Ashen scrap metal removal is another 60 trucks per week. Who's financially responsible for Bacchus Marsh Road, Heels Road, Broderick Way and Production Way?
Thank you for the question, Joanna. You're very much getting into the specifics here, so we'll go to the Director of City Infrastructure, Director Sturton.
Thank you for your questions, Joanna. The City of Greater Geelong is aware of the potential impact on the surrounding road network and has recently provided the Department of Transport and Planning with a request for further information to better assess the proposal. The City of Greater Geelong is recognised under ministerial planning permit process as a recommending referral authority as identified in the Schedule to Clause 66.04 in the Greater Geelong Planning Scheme and Section 55 of the Planning and Environment Act 1987. We acknowledge that advice given under this referral capacity is discretionary. However, we do hope that conditions within any permit would necessitate acceptance from the local authority. Bacchus Marsh Road and Forest Road South are both managed by the Victorian Department of Transport. Production Way, McManus Road and Broderick Road are local roads managed by the City of Greater Geelong. Heavy loads are anticipated with an industrial precinct such as this, and any reconstruction of these roads will need to consider the increasing mass of vehicles operating on the Victorian road network. Authorising larger numbers of heavy loads on local roads such as these is considered by the City's engineers via a National Heavy Vehicle Regulator permit process. If it is found that any of our existing road network necessitates upgrades, the City would most likely seek funding through state grants to support such works.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Joanna. David Jackson. Is David here tonight? Nope. Liz Bonner. How are you, Liz?
Good, thank you. Wonderful facility. Great to have such an asset in the north, so thank you to all those that work so hard for it. Tonight I represent the Real Deal for Geelong, which is a broad-based community alliance of unions, faith groups, community centres and community organisations which formed in early 2022 and represents the interests of over 46,000 residents. It jointly endorsed a policy platform to address the issues of secure housing, meaningful work and the cost of living and care and connection in December 2023. The City has a comprehensive social housing plan, which was updated in January 2023, with worthy actions and targets which must be implemented to help address our housing crisis. Of particular concern is the shortage of social and affordable housing in Geelong, with a shortfall of over 7,000 social housing dwellings identified. So our first question is, can the City provide a detailed update regarding the outcome of the actions in the social housing plan to date and what will be implemented this year, please?
Yeah, thank you for your question, Liz, and the work that both yourself and the entire Real Deal organisation does. So the City is continuing to move towards realising the 15 actions that are set out in our social housing plan. We're continuing to advocate to both Commonwealth and state governments for investment in social housing, and we're advocating to the state government for mandatory planning controls for social housing. That's something we've been pushing for a while and something we'd really like to see come to fruition. We're working with developers to negotiate, unfortunately, voluntary agreements for social housing and affordable housing numbers within their developments, which unfortunately all we can do right now is try to negotiate voluntary agreements as opposed to having some enforceable percentages which need to come from the state. As well as exploring options with registered housing providers. But we can get you a more thorough update than that brief summary.
Thank you. Our next question is the City on track to see the estimated 675 social housing dwellings required per annum identified in its social housing plan delivered over the next 20 years?
Yeah, so we absolutely do acknowledge that the social housing plan does have ambitious targets over the next 20 years, but we want to be ambitious. We want to be aiming high and we want to be delivering high. We know that the short-term delivery is going to be difficult and that we need exponential growth in social and affordable housing delivery to achieve the targets we've set out. We are working with both the government and private sector as well as trying to identify council-owned sites where social housing can be delivered, and working with the state even further for what would have been Commonwealth Games legacy housing options, which we believe should have that higher rate of social and affordable housing. So whilst I haven't got the number in front of me of what we're actually going to hit, we are trying to push in this area thoroughly, and we support we also acknowledge and support the Real Deal Geelong in trying to hit those outcomes.
We look forward to working with you on it.
Appreciate it.
Mr Mayor, can I make a comment?
Yeah, sure, Councillor Hathaway.
Thank you. Thanks, Liz, for your question and for the work that Real Deal's doing in this space. I guess I just wanted to add to this from my other hat perspective, working in mental health. We know that the lack of housing has been a problem for a long time, but certainly I've noticed in the last 3 months the number of people in Geelong coming just through my team that I'm working in, community mental health team, who have acute mental health concerns and they're homeless. We're constantly in a position in our inpatient units in Geelong where we're discharging people with acute mental health conditions to homelessness, and I'm sure it's similar in the hospital setting where Councillor Wilkinson works. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. I don't feel like enough is being done in this space. I'm going to be honest about it. There's a lot more that needs to be done. I know there has been some discussions about mandatory inclusionary zoning, which is a statewide issue, and certainly I think we can have a discussion as a council group about what more we can do and what levers we can pull to more strongly advocate for that, because I can't see this being addressed at the level that it needs to be without that mandatory inclusionary zoning. Yep.
Yeah, and that vulnerability at the front line is grim, so we're facing it too. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Emily Flynn. How are you, Emily?
Good, thank you. Evening, everyone. So following on from Liz's questions from the Real Deal around social housing, will the city invest in public education this financial year about the importance of and need for social housing in the community to improve community support for and investment in social housing by all levels of government?
Would you like to ask both your questions at once since they refer to extra resource allocations?
Sure. So will additional resources, including staffing, financial and in-kind, be allocated in this year's budget to ensure progress is made on implementing the social housing plan?
Excellent. Thank you for your questions, Emily. So Council does have dedicated officers to support the community and understanding the importance of social housing. And Council does take a partnership approach to work with not-for-profits, neighbourhood houses, community housing providers and other community organisations, as you know, to support community education initiatives. We also work with the development industry to encourage provision of social and affordable housing across the municipality, and we advocate to all levels of government to address shortfalls in social housing. Now, seeing as we're 3/4 of the way through this financial year and budgets are set in the financial year prior, we're currently fixing up the budget for the financial year ahead of us, so unfortunately councillors can't make such recommendations to have huge financial allocations done for this financial year, but informing the budget, the discussion is available for next year's financial year. That makes sense. Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Mr Mayor, you said that the city has dedicated officers. Can we actually name who those officers are and actually provide those contact details to the Real Deal people? Because
I'm not going to, can't throw names on the spot, but we can provide organisational structure and where these people and resources are.
I are not able to identify who the dedicated officers are, so if they are available, it would be very good for us and also the community to know that.
Well, within the 2,850 staff City of Greater Geelong has, I'm sure we can get some information across. Thank you, Emily.
Thank you.
Simon Reeves. How are you, Simon?
Good, thanks, Mr Mayor and councillors and management. Thank you and welcome to the neighbourhood of North Lane. Great to have you here. Thanks for coming and the opportunity to ask a question. My wife, Kayleen, and I and our 3 kids, we live and work here in North Lane. We also run a community development organisation called North Lane Community Initiatives. However, watch that space. Our name's about to change, new brand coming out soon, so we'll be known as the Good Neighbourhood Project. And we also had the privilege of catering your dinner tonight, so hopefully that went well. Through the Avery Cafe. We also work at a couple of other sites around North Lane, including Labuan Square and Spurwin Avenue. I wanted to firstly say a massive congratulations to the council for this huge investment and building this wonderful facility here in North Lane, and I know it's already instilled a great sense of pride in the suburb. And I hope it's not too soon, but basically my question is, what's next? What are the council's future plans for Corio and North Lane? And in particular, how does the council intend to continue providing opportunities for the residents of 3214 to thrive and flourish? You may remember that the Corio and North Lane structural plan was written in 2012 and needed quarterly monitoring and 5-year reviews. So that's been and gone a long time ago now. There was also a Deakin report commissioned by council called Vital Communities, which many of us contributed to, and it also seems to have fallen by the wayside, including the council officer who was overseeing that project. And given North Lane's continued decline in the CEFA index and its current ranking as the most socially, economically, and I'll add environmentally disadvantaged suburb in Victoria, a label we would very much like to lose very quickly, because the majority of residents here in North Lane love the place in which they call home. However, the reality is the challenges the neighbourhood faces are not disappearing. This is despite the strength and resilience of the locals. North Lane many people in North Lane continue to struggle with numerous hardships and health issues, which we won't go into there because we know what they all are. And North Lane, we feel, should be a real high priority for the council. So while I understand the council cannot do everything, and addressing these issues will probably require a collaborative, integrated, multi-level, multi-sector approach, we do still need a leadership from the council and a plan. So my question is there a plan to address the issues we face in North Lane and Corio? And if not, how can we work together to create one? And how do we make it a top priority?
Yeah, thank you for your question, Simon, and thank you for all the work that yourself, your organisation and everybody who's a part for it does for the proud community out here in the north. You're quite correct that the North Lane community has been identified as the most disadvantaged in Australia for multiple reasons, and something that we often have conversations with and argue with talked with our state and federal colleagues about this, not only just the local members, but decision makers and ministers from all levels of government to try to draw attention and investment to this region. So the Corio and North Lane suburbs have been identified by the Victorian government as a priority area for urban renewal, which is a vast umbrella term, in the recently released Victoria's Housing Statement, The Decade Ahead, 2024 to 2034. Officers have been working with the Victorian Planning Authority to understand the next steps for this work. What does it actually mean for people on the ground? Urban revitalisation in all areas is a complex process which requires all levels of government and agencies to work together, which I will just say, in the northern suburbs, I'm actually seeing a lot of that goodwill from all levels of government to come together and to deliver for the community, which is fantastic to see, because that's what everybody would like to see. We look forward to working with the North Lane Community Initiatives and your new brand going forwards as part of the project planning as it proceeds. So achieving social equity remains a priority of this council. And to this end, the city's leadership team is working to establish an integrated approach to working with the community and key stakeholders to implement the 5 key strategic areas of domains for us, domains of action, which are employment, education, housing, health, wellbeing and livability. A bit more than 5 because they put the last 2 together, but I like to think they need to be separated out all individually. But we appreciate your constant interest in this area, and yourself and other community groups will be communicated with as well following this. Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor Aiken.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, the comment was actually made earlier about when an officer leaves, a project disappears. It's really fascinating. The answer you've received actually talks nothing about vital communities, which is actually a project that was started by the City of Greater Geelong to identify how do we address disadvantage in the northern suburbs. And it's not even mentioned because there's actually no corporate knowledge of what was actually undertaken of that particular project. And I hope it can be found by the new CEO and her new executive team, because we shouldn't be actually reinventing the wheel and re-establishing multi-level and inter-stakeholder relationships. We actually should continue on the work that we've already started. In terms of vital communities, to educate the new CEO and the new executive leadership team, we actually did an audit of our services that we undertake in Norlane and Carrara and the City of Greater Geelong. From that audit, we actually identified where there were gaps in the community of where we need to increase our service delivery area, and where we need to advocate for both state and government level to try to make significant impact on the disadvantage and the vulnerability of the effects in the northern suburbs. Sadly, since that project started over 4 years ago, the statistics have actually got worse in the northern suburbs. So in fact, we've actually gone backwards. And because of the continuous organisational change that's been undertaken and the movement of staff, very good projects that have started are being told, let's start them again and let's come up with a new name and let's actually do it. The community is genuinely angry that they actually want to see some action, and they do want this terrible statistic and this terrible statement that the most disadvantaged community in Victoria is actually in Norlane and Corio. And certainly as a local ward councillor, I do not accept that and will not accept that. And I challenge any officer at the City of Greater Geelong to understand why it is a priority and it needs to be addressed.
Correct.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Aiken. And I hope
Mr.
the
Mayor,
new work builds on top of that. Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Simon. Firstly, I want to say thank you for dinner. It was delicious, and also the work that you're doing in the grassroots. It really is really important, and your approach of how can we work together, because this is how change becomes reality. It is everybody working together. So thank you for being here, and thank you for the continued communication and work that you're doing.
Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson. Councillor Hathaway.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Simon, for the question and for coming along tonight. I guess also to add to those lists of plans that have gone awry, I noted the other day that we have a master plan for Stead Park dating back to 2009, because I had a question from a resident, and I'm sure that also requires an update in light of the Commonwealth Games legacy projects. You know, whilst there has been some mixed feedback on the Nash, I think the strength of this project and where we're sitting here was that it was a partnership between three levels of government that got us here, and certainly what I've witnessed is a real strong advocacy from community members that have been involved in this, and acknowledge I've come in at the tail end of that process. But I know there's a couple of you here tonight who've been part of that community liaison group. So I just want to acknowledge the work and the advocacy that you've done over that time. I'm certainly frequently reminded that addressing the challenges here in the north isn't rocket science, and that the people that live out here in Norlane and Corio have the answers. But I think perhaps what's been lacking is the political will at times to listen and implement those changes. And if I can be so bold, Simon, just to acknowledge that there's a bit of a campaign at the moment around reactivating Labuan Square. Geelong City Council invested, I think, $250,000 in aesthetic upgrades to that square, and the next plan is activating that space. So I would encourage fellow councillors and members of the ALT to come down on a Wednesday. There's a community lunch in Lab Square every Wednesday, and to see firsthand the work that's being done at a grassroots level. Thanks, Simon.
Thank you, councillors. Look forward to continued conversation. Cheers.
Thanks, Simon. We have well and truly gone over the allocated question and submission time, but we have plenty of people here who still are waiting to be heard, so I will extend it so people can be heard. Submitted number 19 was Lorraine Kulik. Lorraine's here. How are you, Lorraine?
Well, thank you. How are you?
Excellent. Yeah, well, thank you.
Okay, so I'm here representing the Lara Giants Basketball Club, for which I am the Vice President. We have over 1,000 members, covering all ages and all abilities, making us the biggest basketball club in the region. We are a diversified volunteer-run club with over 100 volunteers. We recorded our biggest membership for the finalising summer season, and the upcoming winter season is looking to be much more larger. The North make up a significant component of the teams entered within Geelong United's Basketball Association, yet misses out on vital opportunities for playing and training facilities. A majority of the games played by our members are on the other side of Geelong. After 3 years of advocating for this project, the club were fortunate to receive funding for a business case in 2022 for the construction of a stadium at Beckley Park. The business case for the project is supported by both concept and cost planning. The club requires a commitment to infrastructure funding to move forward. My question tonight is, what do the Lara Giants Basketball Club need to do to have council develop a funding model and funding advocacy plan to deliver this essential stadium?
Yeah, thank you for your question, Lorraine, and thank you for your continued advocacy in this space. You know, there's much demand and an incredibly large number of players, parents and club supporters that wish to see this progress and have necessary infrastructure, you know, built out of the ground so it can be utilised by the community. We do believe that officers have been meeting with the club about this proposal for the last couple of years, and there's further meetings coming down the track as well, which are in place. I even discussed it with the local member for Lara, Ella George, this morning in my usual catch-ups with her too. You're also aware that the city has undertaken a review of its indoor recreation facility strategy to identify crucial issues and opportunities that are impacting on the critical shortage of indoor facilities and the need to develop a strategic plan that will guide, planning going forwards in this development. The review that was done identified the need for more indoor courts across the entire municipality and has identified a number of strategic priorities for the city in this space. In regards to developing a funding model and how that work will progress, that's really going to be set out in these meetings, continue advocacy between the club, the council and the state government. I believe we continue to have these meetings set and input and progression in this, we will reach an outcome which will be the best model and plan going forwards.
Are any locations in the north featured for that? Do you know?
I couldn't put my foot in, I'm afraid.
Okay.
But these plans are, there was a couple in there.
Great.
But this is something that yourselves, the ward councillors and the local member, I'm sure, will work out and progress.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Greg Wilson. Greg Wilson? Anybody who's not here tonight, their answers will be sent directly to them as well. It's published online. Jean Nell? How are you, Jean?
I'm fine, thank you. Very fine, in fact. Thank you very much.
Excellent.
And thank you for the opportunity to be here and for extending time to allow us the opportunity to speak. And congratulations, this is a magnificent building. I walked past people walking in and asked them, is it nice? And they went, it's great.
Oh, excellent.
So,
thank you for the feedback.
Great. I'm a member of Cool Geelong. We're a community organisation that advocates for tree management approach that recognise the vital role that trees play in sustainable development, which includes economic, social and environmental aspects. So that's why we're here. I absolutely support and wholeheartedly, I applaud. I'm delighted to notice the council's willingness to amend your recommendation. I very much appreciate that. But I think it's important to also share why we felt it's really important to say we need to speak to the community. This is a report that was 18 months in the making. And although the report at several instances mentions community concern about costs and it mentions the tension between development and tree management, which in fact actually underscores the need for education in the area, it does so, and it sort of makes assumptions about community feelings without ever consulting the community, while stating that it didn't consult the community. And that's why we really felt there's some errors here, and it needs to be addressed. Authentic community engagement promotes greater trust, and when you think about whether you want to adopt the recommendation, confidence in democracy and in you as councillors. It builds stronger relationships and it leads to better outcomes for all. It's critical that we engage with each other. Now, the urban forest is vital for our livability. And as a World Tree City, congratulations again, the councillors and the city staff would agree that a healthy, well-managed urban forest is important for communities. And if you care for the trees, they provide substantial benefits for everybody, including business, residents, and the council. So we really look forward to working with councillors and city staff on this, but as quick as possible. We don't want to take another 18 months. And not just a survey, deliberative engagement where participants are provided with a clear task or question, have access to appropriate resources and information, and most importantly, are given the time and space to deliberate with you. Let's have a conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. I'll take that as a submission, and we appreciate your words. Thank you. Louis de Coca, here.
Good evening, Mayor.
How are you, sir?
Councillors. Thank you. I hope you are feeling well tonight. The City of Greater Geelong Urban Forest Strategy 2015 to 2025 calculated Geelong's tree canopy coverage at 14%, 14%, with approximately half on public land, half on private land, 7%, 7%. The same report stated peer-reviewed literature, so research recommends an optimum urban land use canopy cover of 40% because that delivers the maximum benefits to an urban environment. Now, if 40% is optimum, for the communities tonight, Lara was estimated to be at 15%. Corio barely at 10%. North Shore at 4%. 4%, 10 times less than optimum. The report to be considered tonight records the Council's very low target that it set for itself of reaching 25% by 2045. 2045, 25%, where 40% is optimum. It also does not record that according to the Council, for the 7% that it controls on public land, it adds per year in net gain 50 trees. That's not percent, that's numbers, 50, according to the Council's website. Now, that's roughly equivalent to the number of trees in the private realm that we lose in one sizable development application. Often boundary trees that can be retained without impacting on the number of housing or the quality of the housing provided. Easily retained. There's no way in which this city can reach an improved target that's more ambitious and adequate without working with the community. We share the land. We share the trees. And yet, tonight is just one of the examples where it's clear that there's a reticence from the council side to work with the community. And I think there's an elephant in the room, and I want to call it out. I do believe that council officials believe that trees cannot be retained without impacting on housing and development. And furthermore, there's a deep concern about work for arborists and tree fellers. And let me put their concerns at rest. Some of the biggest cities in the world providing adequate housing for all of their citizens have incredible tree coverage. Singapore, Frankfurt, we can go down the list. It is possible. And plus, there will always be work for arborists because trees need to be maintained.
Louis,
so
you reached your time limit for your first question on submission, so I'll ask you to...
Thank you, and I'm going to skip my second question, so I'm taking a bit more time. The call is let's actually work together and be more ambitious. And that's an open invitation. And now the question. And please listen to the question. When is it best governance practice for this council to exclude public consultation and engagement before accepting a report and recommendations that impact on the community. When is it best practice for this council to do so? Thank you.
Thank you for your question and description there, Lewis. So the notice of motion that was called for officers to provide an assessment of options to the council. The planning control options in the report would include extensive consultation when these options are implemented. However, there has been a change made, as you see on tonight, for recommendation 2, or point 2 of the recommendation, that goes for community consultation prior to that. So we're not trying to avoid our duties or obligations or what may be best practice. There's just been amendments to make sure that when this goes out as a board tonight, it will be in the best format. So while the revisions might have been late, we still believe that the final document in front of us right here meets all the best governance criteria.
And I would agree with you that the amendments come very close to that, and I hope from now on we will see that embedded. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Mayor, and to all the councillors.
Really appreciate it, Louis. Jenny Knox.
Can I read Jenny's question?
You may be Jenny's proxy, Jean. Thank you.
I'll have to read. The city recently announced its recognition as a tree city of the world for the second year. 8 other cities in Australia are also recognised as tree cities. And one of the benefits of membership as a tree city is that member cities have access to a wealth of resources and sharing of information on tree canopy management, which is incidentally also not included in the report. The tree report tabled for tonight consulted with a number of cities, but only one of the world tree cities recognised in Australia. And the question is, why did the report not consult with more Australian world tree cities recognised for their tree management? They may be different, but they may have tips on successes to be gained. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean, and thank you, Jenny. So as the study was about regulations on the protections of trees on private land, we focused consultation on cities with the same regulatory framework that we're trying to operate under. That would be the same as the City of Greater Geelong, so cities within the state. The City of Greater Bendigo, which is also among the Australian world cities, was consulted based on the similarity in context and location within Victoria with the aim of benefiting from their experiences. So how can the framework work under the wider framework?
Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. Now that was the end of the pre-submitted questions and submissions. Is there anybody else in the council chamber, or not in the chamber tonight, who wants to ask a question of council? There's just one, sir, from the audience that's been... I'll take you there, sir, please. This is just the one I'm going to accept from the floor, then unfortunately due to time constraints, we'll have to move into the report sections.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
So I could just get your name, sir.
Sure. My name is Brendan Chavas. I'm the General Manager for the Lara Sporting Club. I quickly just want to thank CEO Ali Wasty for her personal involvement in getting the container scheme onto our leased block land, which is very helpful. It's very popular, I can say firsthand, it's very busy, and we appreciate it. Thank you, CEO. My concerns or submission and question mirrors some of the others some of my colleagues and friends have mentioned today in regards to funding around the northern suburbs. The Lara Recreation Reserve serves as the Township of Lara's only multi-sport recreation reserve. With an area population of approximately 20,000, the current gender-biased facilities serving sports and for the public ovals 1 and 2 are currently inadequate. These inadequate facilities include away rooms built in the 1960s with a single shower room with no partition, and a grandstand built in the 1940s patched together over the decades with blood and sweat from our volunteers. Add on to this the city's planned northern growth corridor, a booming population, and importantly ever-increasing participation from women's football and cricket. Our facilities are becoming substantially inadequate, even inappropriate. In 2019, the Lara Sporting Club, along with other groups in the reserve, petitioned and took active part in the city's Lara Recreation Reserve Master Plan. After months of consultation and work, the master plan was submitted and it, along with its budget, was endorsed by this council. We recognise the city have completed stage 1 and are about to complete stage 2 of the master plan. This means finally our netball and baseball clubs no longer need to operate out of shipping containers or bring diesel generators to power their facilities on game days. However, stage 3 is an essential and vital part of supporting our ever-expanding community. Stage 3 relates to demolishing facilities built in the post-Second World War era, yet it is my understanding there is no mention of this in the current or proposed budgets moving forward, meaning actual use of these vital facilities are years away at the earliest. The Lara Sporting Club is proud to have over 2,000 active members, and yet our facilities can't handle men and women at the moment. My question is, when will the city honour its 2019 council-endorsed commitment to finish the Lara Recreation Reserve Master Plan, and more specifically include stage 3 of the master plan in its next budget? I understand that this was not pre-arranged, so you won't have an answer on the spot.
Yeah, no, but we do appreciate you coming out, Brendan, and supporting your continued advocacy of this project, which has been one with multiple stages and has been sorely needed in the Lara community. We will get an answer, we'll have to take that on notice, and we'll get an answer to you. But thank you for coming out and representing your organisation.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks to our councillors as well. Cheers.
All right. That concludes question time for this evening. So thank you all everyone who's been out here tonight to make a submission or ask a question of council. I'm going to go through petitions and joint letters, and then I'll call for a brief recess before we go into section 2, being reports. We have received two petitions from members of the public. One petitioner nominating a ward councillor to table on their behalf, and one being presented by Carl Schultz. Carl, would you like to step forward and table your petition?
Thank you for this time.
Right, Carl.
Look, I'm representing all the residents of Cabernet Road, Corio. Now, you've all got the petition and
Yes,
my
sir.
statement. This problem I see is very dangerous. We've got little kids on scooters, mothers with prams, elderly people with walking frame walking down the street of Cabernet Road. Now, I believe this has become a dangerous situation from previous council decisions. Goldsworthy Road, speed humps. Paisley Road, speed humps. Both these roads run east-west, same as Cabernet Road. So what you've done with these previous decisions is people have gone speed hump, speed hump, speed hump, no speed hump, perfect straight. Let's fly down this road really fast. Now, to make it worse, it has no footpaths. Okay, so by doing that, you've created a situation which is dangerous for people. We've had accidents, close calls, everything else. All right? Now, I've spoken to one department who oversee it, and they said, oh, we've got to check and make sure it's the guidelines. Unfortunately, your guidelines aren't for roads without footpaths. So they've got to be a lot stricter if there's no footpaths, but your guidelines don't account for that. Now, I gather all the views of, at one stage of life, seen motor car racing. Now, you'd all agree cars are faster down the straight than they are on the corners. So in the wisdom of this department who come and got counters and speed devices put in the other day, they put it at the top of the road near the corner where cars are slowing down or coming around the corner ready to accelerate. Now, anybody with any idea would go, hang on, let's put them in the middle of the drag strip where everybody's going faster. So whatever data they're going to get is not going to be consistent, right? And the regulations are not going to be consistent because there's no footpaths, right? So all that's done is previous council decisions have failed in their duty of care to these people by forcing them onto the road, forcing other people to go, oh, I'm going to take the shortest, fastest way I can to Corio Village, and it's going to continue. So the only way to protect these people and to fulfil your duty of care to us as residents is to slow them down. And the cheapest, feasible way is to put a few speed humps in. We've had crashes, close calls, and it's got to stop. I know from talking to the residents, because I've only been there 3 years, so many have told me, we've put this to council so many times, you're wasting your time. Oh, good luck with that, that'll never happen. Well, I'm a bit more hopeful They will take this under advice and actually help us keep our people safe, especially when you see old ladies with walking frames, wheeling things, trying to walk up the street to get their daily exercise. You know, kids on scooters just to go to the schools, because all the schools are on the other side of Princess Highway, so they have to come down there to get to all the primary schools. The main bus to Geelong is the number 1. So where are they? Straight down there to the number 1 bus route. It's a thoroughfare for everybody west of Princess Street that want to avoid speed humps. We've got to do something to protect the people.
Absolutely. Thank you, Carl, for presenting this petition and speaking and representing your community so passionately.
Thank you.
You've certainly taken advice. Thank you.
Thank you.
I believe the second petition to be tabled is by Councillor Hathaway.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So I'm introducing the petition tonight, which has been gathered by Rainbow Local Government, so I just want to acknowledge them for their work. The petition is titled Petition to Greater Geelong City Council around the LGBTIQA Action Plan. There's approximately 161 signatures on this petition, and it calls on Council that we, the residents and ratepayers of Greater Geelong, hereby petition Greater Geelong City Council to develop an LGBTIQA action plan. Councillors will be aware that at the start of last year we implemented our first LGBTI advisory committee, and Councillor Mason chaired that till I very rudely ousted you when I came in mid last year, but you very graciously handed it over, so I thank you for that. It's been really enjoyable chairing this committee. And there's a lot of passionate community members that are coming in every other month that really want to see an action plan. Every time this is raised, the Rainbow Ready Roadmap comes up, and we're now over 12 months in of having this advisory committee, and there's no roadmap and there's no action plan. So I, again, thank you, Jan Farrell and the Rainbow Local Government for collecting this. I would like to put a resolution forward with tabling this petition, that a written report be prepared on the contents of the petition or joint letter and come back to a council meeting no later than 3 months' time.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you.
So it's in line with the governance rules that council may pass a resolution that a written report be prepared on the contents of the petition or joint letter for presentation to a meeting. So Councillor Hathaway, do you have a seconder for your motion? Councillor Wilkinson, you able to second this?
Happy to second this. Yep.
Excellent. And with that, I can put that to the vote. All those in favour that council request the CEO prepare a written report on the contents of the petition for presentation to a meeting no later than the May of 2024. All those in favour? Thank you. All those against? The item is carried. Thank you, Councillor Hathaway.
Thank you.
With that, that draws a close to question and submission time and petitions. So I'll be calling a 10-minute recess before we head into section 2 of the reports this evening. Thank you. All right, everybody, we'll get the show back on the road. If I could ask my table to reconvene.
Nope.
Ghost microphone.
I think Belinda might
Oh, yeah.
be in at some stage.
All right, we're back and ready to rock and roll. Thank you, everybody, for your patience. We'll go straight into section 2 now, which are the reports for this evening. First, cab off the ranks is the cat curfew review. Thank you, everyone. Moved first by Councillor Murray, seconded by Councillor Wilkinson.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Councillor Cadwell.
If my microphone's working, let me just check, yes. I would like to put forward a procedural motion, being that report 2.1 cat curfew is deferred, and I believe that Councillor Aitken was going to second that.
Okay, so we're going to move in for deferral. We have a seconder. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour of deferring the motion? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, yep. All those against? I can count that one. The motion is carried. So that item is being deferred now. Right, item number 2, which is planning controls for trees on private land with a revised officer recommendation. That is moved by Councillor Mason, seconded by Councillor Cadwell. Councillor Mason.
Thank you, Mayor Sullivan. There is a community development law that in Community Development 101, through participation you get commitment. And I thank the community members that have reminded us of that tonight. And certainly tree and tree cover in urban environments is now commonly understood to be an essential element in climate change adaptation and in reduction of heat sinks absorption in heat sinks and heat absorption in inorganic surfaces. Furthermore, as Jean said tonight earlier, trees enhance the beauty of urban environments and improve the community's physical and mental health. So preserving and expanding urban tree populations, as well as ground covers and shrubs. It's important for a sustainable future and are important and essential elements in the protection and enhancement of biodiversity and ecosystems. So, Mr. Mayor, there was a notice of motion on the 26th of July 22 Council meeting to protect trees on private lands in urban areas, and as a consequence, we've received this report. There are currently no consistent statewide planning provisions to protect trees in urban environments. A number of Victorian councils, the Department of Transport and Planning, the Country Fire Authority, Barwon Water and independent arborists have been consulted during these investigations. And the city also received advice from the Department of Transport and Planning that a costly local planning scheme approach was likely to be unlikely to be supported by the Department of Transport and Planning. So the city's discussions with this department also identified that the state is considering methods to strengthen tree protection on private land throughout Victoria. So the reports ask Council to consider 5 regulatory options to increase tree protection in urban environments following this notice of motion in July 2022. And we had 5 options. The first option was advocacy, and that we do need to write to the Minister of Planning supporting statewide regulation to protect trees on private land. Option 2, tree planting guidelines and to continue to promote the benefits of trees through council projects, strategies and policies. And option 3, to expand existing planning policy to promote tree retention. So, furthermore, there were 2 other options: to develop a significant tree register and introduce planning overlay, and to develop significant tree registered and introduce a local law. This report has indicated that options 4 and 5 at this point in time is too expensive and too time consuming. But in the meantime, there's still a lot of work to do, and as in option 2, we do need to develop tree planting guidelines, and in option 3, develop a planning policy to promote retention. So this is really going to involve significant and direct community engagement. And I'll leave it to other councillors to mention more before I round up. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. Councillor Cadwell.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think Councillor Mason has summed it up very succinctly and accurately. The only thing I would add is that it's really good to see, as was commented on tonight, the further community consultation which was incorporated into this project, and I particularly note the work, the advocacy work of Councillor Mason and Councillor Wilkinson in talking and advocating to that with the officers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cadwell. Any other councillors to comment? Councillor Nelson.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Certainly, Louis spoke about the tree canopy in Geelong, and that there's less than 15% in places like Bell Park and Highton, and less than 10% in places like Wandana Heights and South Geelong, where you'd expect them to be more, but it's actually really low. So 25% is a start. Yes, you're right, it's not ideal, but it's certainly a start. I note that the National Trust has a significant tree register, so we probably should be engaging with them also. But the most people we should engage with is the community, and that's what's been added here, to engage with the community and the broader community to explore options to strengthen our tree canopy. So thank you to my neighbours, Louis and Jean. You've been massive advocates on this over the last couple of years, but now you've got the problem of working even harder now during that community process. So I thank you for your ongoing support and advocacy for this project. I was one that drove that 1 Million Trees project, as you know, to try and get 1 million trees planted in Geelong over the next few years, so we've got a long way to go yet. So hopefully this will reach far and wide, and keep up the good work, and we've got to work even harder now. So thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. No further comments to be made? Oh, sorry, Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Mayor. And just on that community engagement, I take the note that Jana sort of brought up about the conversation, the way that we engage, ensuring that it's actually time's taken and that it's actually a conversation. So just, noting that sort of quality of engagement will be our next focus. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Mason to close.
Thank you, and thank you, councillors, for your support in this. We certainly have a lot of work to do. It's a very complex subject, and it is interesting that the state is also looking at a standard approach, but that's not going to inhibit the work that we do. We do have a lot of work to do, and I do understand that we have, it was mentioned earlier on, the tensions that exist. Well, we need to get an optimum result. We need to have optimum land use, that word was used before, and an optimum result as well, and that will be certainly gained through enhanced and high quality community consultation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. With that, put to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. All those against? That item is carried. Item number 3 on the agenda is Northern and Western Geelong Growth Areas Annual Progress Report. Moved by Councillor Mason, seconded again by Councillor Cadwell. Councillor Mason.
Thank you, Mayor Sullivan. At its 13th of December meeting in 2022, Council resolved that officers would provide an annual report to Council on the progress of the precinct structure plans and communicated timelines for the northern and western Geelong growth areas. So we note that this progress report is being tabled tonight, and we note their results. Mr Mayor, we have high aspirations for these growth areas and to set a high standard of livability, and it is most important that these early PSPs reach that standard, especially as recently rediscovered Eelis dragon has been identified on some of the precious remnant grasslands across the growth areas. Spanning 5,500 hectares from Lovely Banks to Finesford, the growth areas are destined to be to satisfy some of the region's future housing needs to an estimated 110,000 residents. So this is an update on the 4 precinct structure plans being prepared by the city. The first is Creamery Road. Following landowner consultation, the precinct infrastructure design and development contribution plan is being completed, supported by updates to relevant technical studies. The council adoption of this PSP for Creamery Road is expected in September. Secondly, there's Elko Road East. The precinct is challenging due to its complex topography and biodiversity values. A draft feature urban structure was completed and shared with landowners in March 23. Remaining technical work will go ahead once the Victorian grassland Eelis dragon habitat, suitability mapping and targeted surveys are finalised. Elements of the PSP are progressing where possible, such as PSP drafting, mapping, background report summaries. Additional infrastructure design and options testing is underway for drainage network solutions. And finally, Elko Road West, including Heels Road West and Batesford North. Third-party funding agreements with the developers for final review to cover the technical studies required for the species to deliver the precinct structure plans and technical work. The city is in the process of undertaking environmental field studies across the growth areas following the recently discovered Eelis dragon, as I mentioned before, in a similar habitat. Protecting species may take the form of additional biolinks and connecting potential habitats through this growth precinct. So I'll leave it to other councillors to make some further comments.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. Councillor Cadwell.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just to add to Councillor Mason's excellent summary, the draft EPBC plan, which stands for the Environment Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Plan, sets out a range of commitments and a conservation framework to address the impacts of matters of national environmental significance, and that will be updated in response to community submissions last year and the strategic response to this Victorian grassland Eelis dragon. A planning scheme amendment to implement those recommendations and changes to the Northern and Western Geelong growth areas framework is expected to be completed in 2025, and currently technical work is underway on a Geelong growth areas transport and services strategy, including the design and costing of the 3 bridges in this western growth area. Personally, I commend the work done on this project, which will see a huge precinct of housing equivalent probably to the Armstrong Creek area, which will be developed in the northwest from Lovely Banks to Finesford, and which is estimated to provide close to 110,000 homes in the area, which are much needed for our region. And I urge Council to do everything possible to advance this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cadwell. Councillor's comment? If not, I'll throw back to Councillor Mason to close.
Thank you, Mayor Sullivan. Landowners, agencies and traditional owners have also provided feedback through design and preparation of these PSPs and supporting studies. It's also important to note, Mr Mayor, that the PSP's development contribution plans and supporting strategies will be subject to public exhibition and an advisory committee hearing through the planning scheme amendment process. So I commend the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. With that, put it to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. All those against? The item is carried. Item number 4 is Amendment C383GGEE, Advertising Sign Guidelines, Consideration of Panel Report and Adoption. Just to shake things up, this one will be moved by Councillor Mason, seconded by Councillor Cadwell. Councillor Mason.
Thank you very much for your very warm welcome back from my leave, Mr Mayor.
Deputy Mayor.
Anyway, this report recommends Council adopt the amendment, sign guidelines. This amendment seeks to update the advertising sign guidelines incorporated in the Geelong planning scheme. Mr Mayor, some commonly encountered issues which we need to continue to manage as follows. Visual clutter, resulting from excessive numbers and sizes of signs as well as their placement, such as where they block out a competing sign. Impacts on buildings, particularly where signage is not in proportion to the building or alters or obscures architectural features. Or impacts on an area such as that signs are of such a size or height that dominate the built form or character of a streetscape. Or signs that obscure or dominate views or vistas to significant natural or man-made features, or use of variable messaging signs to promote sales or commercial activities and other detrimental impact that have on road users and the amenity of the area. So there are many complexities in developing these guidelines. Mr Mayor, exhibition of the amendment in May and June 23 resulted in 8 written submissions. All submissions requested changes, with 7 providing objections and 1 supporting submission. Issues included the prescriptiveness of the guidelines, in particular specific guidelines regarding growth areas and certain sign types. Council, under delegation on the 30th of August 2023, resolved to refer all submissions to an independent panel appointed to the Minister of Planning, subject to some changes being made. Those recommendations are what we now have.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. Councillor Cadwell.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Again, I think Councillor Mason has summed that up very well. I don't have anything else to add. Thank you.
Indeed. Councillors to comment? Councillor Mason to close.
Nothing further to add, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. With that, I'll put to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. All those against? The item is carried. Now, item 5 on the agenda tonight is state government grant opportunities. Do I have a mover and seconder for this item? Mover being Councillor Harwood, seconder being Councillor Wilkinson.
Mr Mayor, I'd like to move an alternative recommendation for this matter, please.
Councillor Murray, do you have a seconder for your alternative recommendation?
Mr Mayor, I'm happy to second that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'll now ask that. I'll give you time to speak to your alternative recommendation, Councillor Murray.
It's up on the in the red now, Mr Mayor. So the Hamlin Park comes out, Eldersley Reserve goes in, and number 2 is the council co-contribution is increased.
Do you wish to speak to it further?
I do.
Please.
And I'll just commence by, I understand the optics of this, and I know how it looks, and it doesn't look great.
So actually, just before you start, I do apologise. So just letting people know from the audience. So now there's an alternative recommendation on the table. Councillor Murray has moved that. He'll speak to it. Then Councillor Cadwell will have the right to speak to it as a seconder. The council will then debate as to if this becomes the substantive motion. It will go to a vote. If it passes, it will be the substantive motion. If not, we return back to the original. So that's the way the process will go. Councillor Murray, please.
And I'll just reinforce what I've just said then. So it's been highlighted already, Mr Mayor. A few years ago, there was money in the budget for a master plan for the Elderslie Reserve, which was done and completed. There was drawings drawn up, but it highlighted the condition of the current change rooms that existed and still exist today, probably from about the early 70s, the change rooms. So they're in need of urgent attention. That still hasn't been addressed. And the project missed funding in a number of budgets. Now, I'm aware that both Hamlin Park and Elderslie Reserve were highlighted in the city's social infrastructure plan 2020 to 2023 as projects to complete. And that strategy plan relied on the AFL Bowen G21 strategy, where both projects were highlighted. Now, this came before us. I questioned between the two, Hamlin Park and Elderslie Reserve, and I was informed it was a line ball decision. So my conscience is that we have a proposal for a facility just up the road at Hamlin Park, and I understand that, but we also have one that is in dire need of some work at Elderslie Reserve. So do we just ignore Elderslie Reserve, or do we commence another new project in the city? And I think what has occurred tonight has really highlighted the number of master plans that this council passes through the chamber, and it really does set the scene for those clubs and builds expectations about what can be delivered. Newtown and Chilwell Football Club in the female division were one of the original clubs to support female football, and that was in 2010, and they've won 4 junior premierships to date, and they currently exist of a senior team, under-19 team, under-16 team, under-12 team and under-10 team. Now, these female footballers are expected to use the same facilities that the males currently use that are way, way out of date, and an inspection of them would reveal such. The football section has the use of 2 change rooms, home and visitors, that date back to the 1960s. Each change room, there's 1 stall toilet and a communal shower that serves 5. And I don't think anybody would allow their daughter to use any of those toilets. The floor in the showers is breaking away, exposing holes to potentially unhygienic facilities. Now, the numbers of the female footballers at Newtown has in fact dropped away because of the current facilities. And there was an OH&S issue that was raised towards the end of last season by one of the competing clubs that were using the facilities there, and the use of them and how bad they thought they were. So I understand this is really subjective. It's disappointing and it shouldn't be as it is, but and it's not about comparing the 2 clubs. I say we fix what we have first. You can't ignore them, and instead of funding new projects and building expectations. So, Mr. Mayor, that's the changes that have been made to the original recommendation. There are, of course, other projects up there that obviously deserve funding as well, and I'll leave it for other councillors to speak further, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Cadwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the need to upgrade the female-friendly change rooms at Elderslie Reserve is clear. I've seen the facilities myself, and I've spoken to the club members, including some of the female players out there who've told me and shown me how inadequate the current facilities are. The lack of facilities have led to a decline, as Councillor Murray has already indicated, a decline in the under-19 and the senior women's football teams, with female players not even willing to shower or use the change rooms, and they have significant concerns about their privacy and their safety. For a growing club with more than 1,000 participants, 500 footballers and close to 100 female footballers, which is currently in decline since the highest numbers in 2021, when I think they had 150 football players, and a club that's fielding an under 10, an under 12, an under 16, an under 19 and seniors teams, have won 4 premierships and 6 AFL, and have produced 6 AFL women players. It's clear that we do need to invest in this club, so that's why I'm supporting this recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cadwell. Now the councillors to comment on the alternative recommendation. Councillor Harwood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This has unfortunately highlighted, I guess, the lack of support for AFLW in general in our region. And there are a number of clubs that do not have any female-friendly change room facilities. In actual fact, this has been to the detriment of women in sport and trying to grow women in sport, in this case AFLW. And in actual fact, we're seeing numbers across the region drop dramatically. And one of those reasons is because we do not have enough female-friendly change rooms. The issue here is, as I said, I think it's the 7th or 8th year of AFLW in our region. There has been no money from AFL. There has been minimal money or selective funding from state and federal governments. And I guess a lot of the work's been left to council to try and pick up the shortfall. And it is impossible for council to fund all AFLW participating clubs at this point in time. Hence, we have a particular system that we go through. And it should be stressed, and it's not a criticism, but this particular ranking was done by city officers, which is their role, not by councillors. What we do is connect with the communities and the clubs directly and go to the grassroots of the issues. And what we find here is an anomaly in what I would call an anomaly. And I will be supporting the Elderly Reserve, but I'll also be supporting the Hamlin Park funding as a line item in the budget. And I'll have that discussion with my fellow councillors about that. So I give a commitment to the Hamlin Park, to the project, that it will still remain on the funding list, among many, many others. I can see heads being shaken, and I already know the disappointment. I've sat where you have sat. I understand it, but what I'm giving you is a commitment to make sure that it doesn't fall off and the funding does come through in the appropriate manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harwood. Other councillors to comment. Deputy Mayor Aiken.
Mr Mayor, thank you. Before I do speak, I wish to acknowledge the Wellington Cricket Club that's actually here. And I also want to acknowledge the Bell Park Sports and Recreation Club that are here, especially their life members that are in the front row. And I suspect both Bell Park and Wellington actually came tonight because they were actually going to be celebrating the decision that was actually communicated on Friday. So that decision actually was that a recommendation would be put before the council to actually support a number of sporting organisations throughout the city of Greater Geelong, endorsed by request for state government funding. And the club in particular, Bell Park Sport and Recreation Club, are now sitting here tonight witnessing something that is extremely dangerous. Essentially what is happening, the officers have had an independent assessment process. They've actually made an independent recommendation to council, and they've actually considered that based on what our financial position is as a council and also the needs assessment that is in the community. And what has actually happened is an individual councillor has actually moved a recommendation to increase the amount of funding by over $550,000 without a proper financial assessment of that. and they have withdrawn one particular football club and replaced it with another football club. And the basis of that argument of why that has occurred has not been justified. And in fact, in the last 10 minutes, I've just received a message from Jeff Jarvis, who is the president of the Bell Park Sport and Recreation Club, and he said, in response to the councillors talking about numbers, these are our current numbers that we have in terms of female participation. There's 312 females at the Bell Park Sport and Recreation Club, which is essentially what the officers actually have told the council group as well too. And of those, 22 are playing cricket, 180 are playing netball, 110 are playing football, and there's a total of 312 females associated with the club. The club has no facilities at all servicing female football, netball and cricket. We have no female facilities in our main club rooms. Our club has just been chosen to host the Under-12 Australian Football Championships in August, and the City of Greater Geelong has been assisting with that process as well too. Bell Park is also known as the pioneer of all abilities football in the region. And in fact, this project that is being supported by the officers is actually also assisting all abilities. So it is not just female participation that we're getting a benefit from this process. The amendment that is actually being put forward tonight, and this is from Jeff, will cause conflict in the local community. It will also gives us no confidence that future officer recommendations will be overturned by councillors making individual decisions as well too. This, the decision actually is quite gut-wrenching for the community and the club if councillors are going to start making decisions under this type of process.
I think Councillor Aitken has actually had his allotted time. Did you want to extend the time for Councillor?
Yeah, has had his allotted time. Normally I let people run 30 seconds over if they're wrapping up their points. I'll ask Deputy Mayor to wrap up his final point, please. And
so look, what is happening tonight is going to cause division in our community and our football community in particular. This will actually turn Newtown against Bell Park and Bell Park against Newtown. If we do accept this decision, we actually are also rejecting independent officer assessment advice associated as well too. And I suspect it will also concern nearly every person that's spoken tonight about how council makes decisions about funding applications. The North Shore Football Club's presented to us that they're trying to get $4.5 million. Are they getting the same type of a process and assessment from the council group tonight? It appears not.
Mayor Aitken, thank you for your contribution. Other councillors wish to comment? I'll wrap up as Mayor and speak final, that I understand the points being made by all councillors who have spoken tonight. And all their efforts and all the points they're trying to do is to allocate resources to the areas in the community which they see are in dire need of them. It's resource allocation. I agree with Councillor Harwood that we have seen being woefully underfunded by the AFLW, federal government and Victorian governments. That often it does forward local councils to fund this infrastructure, as we are the closest ones to the community and the ones who will be operating and leasing out these structures. A lot of the debate tonight has been around which clubs need funding. Many of our clubs need and deserve funding to upgrade their facilities. But the actual point of this, what we've got before us right now, is that these are grant applications to the state government. And these are the officer recommendation has been for independently assessed applications as the ones that have the best chance of securing that state government funding, which will then allow us to co-fund the rest of it. Now, if projects are close on the matrix, but one's still higher, that is the project that has a higher chance of securing the funding to be able to ask to help deliver this project in whole. It's not about which club needs it more, unfortunately. There's so many clubs that do need funding. It's which club has the best chance of securing this $1 million extra from the state government to allow us to upgrade these facilities that the community needs. It's statistics, it's maths. And for that reason, I will not be supporting the alternative, but I will be supporting the recommendation myself as it stands previously. And I do want to point out that the recommendation in front of us, that shows council's co-contributions. Items 1.1, 2, 3 and 4 Both applications have an additional $1 million from the state government, with item 5 being $50,000 additional. So they're not the whole sums of the project sums, just the council co-contributions we're talking tonight. And with that, I'll throw back to Councillor Murray to close.
Nothing further to say, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. With that, I'll put that to the vote. All in favour of the alternative recommendation? The alternative recommendation stands.
Division?
Division? A division has been called. All in favour of the alternative recommendation? Councillors in favour are Councillor Cadwell, Councillor Murray, Councillor Wilkinson, Councillor Mason, Councillor Harwood, Hathaway. All those against is Councillor Sullivan, Councillor Nelson and Councillor Aiken. Government, does that need to be debated again, or as the motion as that stands? Yeah, so we've got to debate it again. So there's become the alternative motion. Councillors Harwood and Wilkinson, do you accept and still maintain movers and seconders of what is now the standard motion?
Yes.
Yes. Yep. Do you wish to speak to it?
Look, there's been a bit said about it. As I said, I'll stand by supporting all clubs through the process, and I'll stand by the Hamlin Park application, and we'll see how that goes through our next budget discussions. But I just want to stress, we understand the need in the community. We do get that, but there's also been priorities in the process. In this particular case, it's just elderly reserve is a higher priority at this point in time.
So everyone, please, we won't have yelling out. Thank you, sir. We won't have objections from the crowd. I do apologise. We appreciate your time. Thank you, sir. Yeah. Councillor Harwood.
No, I'm just going to wait for them to leave.
Point of order. I believe that we're actually waiting on some corrected governance advice about the previous advice given.
Well, hang on a second. That doesn't normally constitute a point of order, but I will chat to governance. Ladies and gentlemen, as the alternative recommendation was passed when it was voted on originally, it does not need to be debated for a second time, as thus it stands as a motion of council that has been passed.
Got it.
That's government's advice. We'll now be moving on to item 6 on the agenda. Thank you for everybody attending for the clubs. They are the recommendations that will be going forward to the state government for approval. All right, item number 6 is the financial performance report, year to date ended 31st of December 2023. Moved by Councillor Harwood, seconded by Deputy Mayor Aiken. Councillor Harwood.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The financial report year to date to the 31st of December 23, having gone over it a number of times, it's a bit of a roller coaster ride, in all honesty. We've seen a number of issues faced by the council in the last 12 months plus, and how we've had to deal with that. So we're currently sitting in a reasonable position given the circumstances we face. So the snapshot for me is that the current full year forecast is expected to be favourable to budget by about 450,000 up to December. The recurrent operating result to December is a surplus of about 6.9 favourable to the year-to-date budget. That's primarily driven by high vacancy and underutilisation of materials and services. But that current expenditure trends are mostly expected to continue, and they'll result in full-year savings. The capital forecasts, the forecast of capital works expenditure is 3.4 million favourable year-to-date. That's been driven by timing of variances. The cash and investment balance as of December 23 is 82.9 unfavourable year to date. That's due to a delay in borrowings of $40 million. Our cash inflows from rates and charges is $5 million unfavourable year to date, but the balance is due to lower cash collection rates. And the next instalment for the full year instalments is around the end of this month. In fact, 2 days, which provide a clearer indication of our collection rate, which normally is quite strong. And the forecast cash position is $21 million unfavourable year to date, due to opening cash being lower than expected. I mean, these are just snapshots of the performance to date. It is, as I say, quite a varying financial report, as you expect from a large organisation. But I think the good news is we are trading well. We have a really strong business. We have a very, I guess, new financial team in place. And from what I can see, we're getting some really good results, and I expect those to continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harwood. Councillor Aiken, Deputy Mayor Aiken.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Yeah, look, thank you to the Chair of the portfolio. Look, there's 2 red flags with this particular report. One is that the surplus is being driven by vacancies not being filled and underutilisation of materials, and that's actually not sustainable. And we've seen tonight from the community that they are genuinely concerned about the level of services and the level of capital commitment that council is actually making. So underspending is not a longer term solution to correcting the financial viability of an organisation. And so the challenge will actually be for us is to how we actually address our underlying financial position as an organisation. And a really fascinating one that came out of the financial figures as well too is associated with the rate delinquency. It's really interesting that in fact it's 2.7% less collections than what we had in 2022. And that was actually towards the end of the height of COVID. So you can make the assumptions that rate delinquencies are increasing, possibly because of mortgage stress, possibly because cash, people don't have as much cash holdings, and they are making, the cost of living actually is impacting on the City of Greater Geelong's rate collections at this point of time. So we do need to keep an eye on those 2 issues in our financial report. That is, we can't keep just having vacancies to underline our surplus. We actually do have a responsibility about the level of services that we provide to the community, and we do have to keep a very close eye on our bad debts, and our delinquency rates, because clearly from the information that's starting to come forward it's increasing, unfortunately, and as a consequence, I do encourage the finance team and the rate team to actually work with the community that is struggling with the cost of living, and work with the community that are not able to actually pay their rates. We do have a very good hardship policy in the City of Greater Geelong to assist people. What the latest financial report tells us that there's more people in distress because they're not able to pay their rates.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Aiken. Any councillors to comment? If not, I'll throw back to Councillor Harwood to close.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Aiken has just touched on one area, I guess, is the level of services, which the expectation from council is always very, very high, that our services will be the best that are available. And I guess that's one of the areas that we've been having discussions about in relation to are we able to continue to provide the highest level that the community are expecting every time we provide a service or we build infrastructure. And many councils are doing this. They're having discussions around what they can actually deliver to the expectation of the community. And I certainly promote the idea of further discussion about what services this council is providing and what we're able to do at the highest level. And I think it is an interesting discussion, and it is one we need to have in a mature sense to, I think it's 127 services we currently provide, and I think it's time that we need to look at what we do best and what we're not able to do best for varying circumstances, whether it's financial capacity, resources capacity, staff capacity, whatever it might be, And I think that's a discussion we need to have into the future. But the financial performance year to date to the end of December is not all bad news, and we are still tracking on a very, very modest surplus towards the end of the financial year. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, put to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. All those against? The item is carried. Item number 7 is the G21 Regional Football, in brackets soccer, Strategy 2023-2033 Final Report. Moved by Councillor Wilkinson. Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Nelson. Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Mayor. And this recommendation asked Council to note the final G21 regional football, and we'll call it the beautiful game of world football.
Good medium.
Strategy 2023 to 2033. So it's the report recommends that Council note this, and it's a final G21 and Football Victoria Regional Football Strategy. The strategy was on public exhibition for a period of 6 weeks between the 30th of July and the 10th of September last year, and there were a total of 20 submissions received throughout that engagement period. The strategy builds on the efforts and achievements realised since the initial 2012 strategy and aims to provide a roadmap for the enhancement of facilities, provision and participation in football. It provides clubs and associations, local government authorities and other stakeholders the chance to align planning, investment and development priorities across the region for the next 10 years. It notes the growth in football across the City of Greater Geelong. It's increased significantly over the last 10 years. It's had an overall growth of 67%. So the strategy seeks to develop a plan that drives participation and enhances the experience of all participants while identifying the priorities for investment in related infrastructure. The strategy has considered a range of regional and local issues specific to the City of Greater Geelong, and these include the delivery of the Armstrong Creek West sub-regional football facility, improving the quality and capacity of existing pitches where shortfalls exist, improving the quality of player and referee change facilities to cater for all genders, provision of or support access to indoor facilities to support increased participation in futsal, active, new and existing sites where provision shortages exist, demand necessitates, particularly within the growth areas. So it's this planned approach to being able to deliver infrastructure and enhance participation. And I think planned being the key word and an important part of being able to facilitate this kind of involvement.
Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson. Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Wilkinson said most of what was in that the G21 soccer strategy. So I'll talk about there's over 5,500 participants across the Geelong region in soccer, 114% increase in female participation in the last 10 years. And as we talked about the previous report with the alternate recommendation from Councillor Murray, we've got some real growing pains with our female participation in this sport as well. So as a municipality, we have these growing pains, and we have to provide the infrastructure for female participation and male participation with the growth is 67% in male and 114% in female. So we've really got some issues as a council group that we have to provide. We want people to be more active in our community, and they're doing that. And now we have to work to accommodate this sport, and that's going to be the tricky thing for us over the next 10 years. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Any other councillors to comment? If not, Councillor Wilkinson to close.
Nothing further to add. Identifies the strategies, and it's, I think in terms of the draft strategy for the City of Greater Geelong, it's not going to change because the membership increases. So in terms of our G21 membership group, it's important that we acknowledge this final report and endorse that.
Thank you. Put that to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. Those against? The item is carried. Item number 8 is the proposed road discontinuance and sale of land at the rear of 35 Villamantra Street, Geelong West. Moved by Councillor Cadwell, seconded by Councillor Murray, Councillor Kedwell.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr Mayor. So Council is asked to approve a road discontinuance and the sale of approximately 25 square metres of Tim's Lane, which is at the rear of 35 Villamanta Street in Geelong West. The owner of that property is requested to purchase that land, which is road reserve at the rear of their property, where a portion of their brick fence actually encroaches onto Tim's Lane. The City only received 4 written submissions regarding that proposed sale. All of those submissions were then withdrawn once it was clarified that the sale would simply rectify a minor encroachment and that there was no further encroachment or narrowing of Tim's Lane. The City obtained a market valuation of the land, and the land will be sold at that valuation, and the City will be reimbursed for all costs incurred for the road discontinuance and the sale of the land by the purchaser.
Thank you, Councillor Kedwell. Councillor Murray.
Nothing further to add on that, Mr Mayor.
No worries. May I have the councillors to comment? Councillor Kedwell to close.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Nothing further.
Excellent. Put that to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. All those against? That is carried. Item number 9 is proposed road discontinuance and sale of land at the rear of 160 to 172 Mallops Street, Geelong. Moved Councillor Murray, seconded Councillor Cadwell. Councillor Murray.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Another one, just like the last one, 160 to 172 Mallops Street, Geelong. The owners of that address and 2 Powell Place are seeking to purchase about 141 square metres of the road reserve at the rear of and adjacent to their properties in Powell Place, and there's a map attached which explains that. This part of Powell Place does not provide for any through traffic, so there is no use or benefit to any other party other than the current abutting owners. The sale of land will allow future development opportunities. A panel would be appointed to hear any submissions in relation to the proposed road discontinuance and sale. A further report will be presented to Council to consider the outcome of the community engagement. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Cadwell.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just to add that if a decision is made to sell, the land would be sold at a value determined by the registered valuer, and the City again would be reimbursed for all costs incurred by the purchaser. Thank you.
Thank you. Other councillors to comment? Not. Councillor Murray to close.
Nothing further.
Thank you. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? The item is carried. Item number T23001116, Grinding and Decontamination Services. Moved by Councillor Harwood, seconded by Councillor Aiken. Deputy Mayor Aiken. Councillor Harwood.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This item comes back to us after being recently deferred, and the officers have come back with a recommendation that the services contract is to go to is green care mulching. The grinding of the green waste is carried out at the Point Henry transfer station. Green Care Mulching is a long-term Geelong company employing Geelong workers and has had a long and successful working relationship with COG thus far. It was an open tender process, but it appears the other tender processor company withdrew their tender, so the contract is awarded to Green Care Mulching. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Aiken.
This tender's actually been before council before, and we did receive a briefing on it. It was deferred, and the officers have actually said there's no need to change the original report, and the recommendation is that we should appoint the tender. We are under a tight time frame now because of that delay of the process. And the community would be concerned if our green organic curbside system was disrupted. So I hope we do support the recommendation to actually appoint the tenderer. And in fact, what actually happens is our green waste goes to this facility and actually gets grinded and sorted, and then gets used in the broader community. So thank you.
Thank you. Any of the councillors comment? If not, Councillor Harwood to close.
Nothing further, thank you.
Thank you. Put that to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. All those against? The item is carried. Item number 11 is variation to procurement policy. which is once again moved by Councillor Harwood, seconded by Deputy Mayor Aiken. Councillor Harwood.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Under the Local Government Act, the City must develop and improve and review its procurement process at least once during each 4-year term of council. And it was last reviewed back in December 2021. The policy provides a framework for the purchase of goods, works and services that emphasises value for money while conducting business in a fair and equitable manner. So the report proposes just one policy change at this point by removing a 3-month cap on extending contracts while the city is at market, which will allow a contractor to continue until a tender process is completed. We spend over $400 million annually on procuring goods, works and services, so it is a huge financial responsibility that the city holds here with our procuring of, as I say, goods, works and services. And the committee is committed to supporting local business on value for money basis and supports the engagement of local suppliers, contractors and apprentices, which I think has been a really strong hallmark of this city to support local business where we can and where is appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harwood. Deputy Mayor Aiken.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. Look, it's actually just one procedural change in the procurement policy. It's actually responding to the sunset clause that currently is in it. The sunset clause essentially is that we've got a 3-month cap at this point of time, and that's been removed. What we have to be careful is that it doesn't become something lazy. The 3-month cap was actually imposed when we did put it in the original procurement policy, was to make sure that timeframes were met and that consistency of services was maintained, but at the best price as well too. So by removing the cap, we actually are essentially extending the opportunity that take longer to tender process. But if you read the report, the evidence presented in the report, there were some examples where it was just impossible for the council to reach the 3-month period. But I still think in a principle-based approach to the operation in our procurement, we should try to do it within 3 months. All this is actually doing is providing a mechanism that we actually can do it, because under our current procurement policy we can't. But I certainly would encourage the officers and the administration to make sure that they change over or continue a tender process as quickly as possible when it is expired, because most of our tenders are 3 and 5 years anyway, so there's plenty of time before it reaches that point. Yeah.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Aiken. Any other councillors to comment? Councillor Harwood to close.
Nothing further, thank you.
Thank you. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. All those against? That is carried. Now, item number 12 is the adoption of council policies, which I'm happy to move, seconded by Deputy Mayor Aiken. And there's 3 policies here that have been updated, being the conflict of interest policy, the gifts, benefits and hospitality policy, and the sponsorship policies. Now, new policies have been developed to update the provisions of existing gifts policy, set policy statements for the identification and management of conflict of interests, and a set of framework for sponsorship agreements. These updates, the 3 policies, are considered now to be updated to industry best practice, and very happy to move that motion. Deputy Mayor.
These are actually really important policies because they actually govern how councils should perform their responsibilities. One of them that's really important is our conflict of interest. It actually talks about indirect and direct conflicts, and it actually encourages councillors to have the highest regard for that responsibility, so that if you are a former coach or if you are a life member of a club or something like that, it actually encourages to declare that when you are making decisions before a council chamber, because the community does need to have confidence that there are no conflicts of interest in the way that you're making your decisions under our governance policies. The gifts and benefit and hospitality policy has also been updated based on advice that we received from the monitors and also the local government Victoria. I still think there's a bit of work that needs to be done in this one in terms of financial levels in it. the reality is that we seem to impose quite minimal baselines for councillors compared to our state and federal colleagues, and in fact there probably is a bit of over-reporting in terms of gifts when you look at the policy, but I'm happy to actually endorse it as it's presented to us. And the final one is actually our sponsorship policy, which is really fascinating because it appears we didn't have one. And Council actually has engaged in previous sponsorships, like the Geelong Racing Club was a sponsorship agreement, and now we've actually got a policy. We can actually adhere all of those type of decisions to the sponsorship policy and actually make sure that we are doing it under the highest governance rules, regulations and best practice that you can have in Victoria.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Aiken. Any other councillors wish to comment? If not, I'll close up by saying Deputy Mayor Aiken is right in that conflict of interests, gifts, benefits and hospitality is incredibly important, and it's something that's under constant review and updating by the state and regulatory bodies. One thing we have to be on top of as well. And the sponsorship policy is most important because it's how we relate to other community organisations around us. But with that, I'm happy to put that to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. All those against? The item is passed. Item number 13 is CEO Employment and Remuneration Council Terms of Reference Review, which I'm happy to move, seconded by Deputy Mayor Aiken. Now, it was last year we passed the policy in relation to this item, the CEO Employment and Remuneration Policy. What we have now here are the terms of reference that have come from that policy creation and the review, and includes on to the mid-year review report that will come to Council, which will include extensive CEO KPIs, performance plans and whatnots. A lot of this was discussed in Ed when the policy first came to us and requested these terms of reference, and now we have them for foreseeable future going forwards. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. This is actually probably one of the most important responsibilities that Council has, and that's actually managing their relationship with the CEO and the KPI of the CEO, because in fact under the Local Government Act the only officer that councillors have responsibility for is actually the CEO. This actual terms of reference is quite a significant change from how we've operated within the City of Greater Geelong in the past. We actually are introducing an independent chair, so it won't be a councillor for the first time, it won't be the mayor, it won't be the deputy, it won't be a councillor, it actually will be an independent person. Now that's current best practice and also the preferred model of local government Victoria associated with the terms of reference. So we are now falling in line with general best practice in terms of how we're going to operate our CEO Employment and Remuneration Committee. So we are in the process of actually advertising for a new chair, and it is a very important role because it's actually much more significant than what it was in the past. That person is there to actually lead the CEO recruitment and also KPI performance processes, give professional and independent advice to the council group and ensure that that we do actually get the best value and the best performance from any individual that is sitting in the office of Chief Executive Officer. So I do want to shout out to our former monitor that now is working at the City at Moonee Valley, Prue Digby. She actually assisted with the development of our original policy and also the terms of reference. So thank you for your guidance and support, Prue, and we do wish you well at, well, I do wish you well at Moonee Valley, and I hope the councillors up there take the same opportunities that we certainly did to use your skills and expertise in improving governance as we did in Geelong.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Aiken. Any other councillors wish to comment? In closing, I'll take the opportunity to thank the current and who will soon be wrapping up independent member of the CEO committee, which is Mike McKinstry, who's served us now for a couple of years, done a fantastic job, and we're looking forward to that new independent member joining us who will be chairing this committee going forwards. With that, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. All those against? The item is carried. Section 3, record of informal meetings of councillors. Can we have a mover and seconder for the record? Moved Councillor Wilkinson, seconded Councillor Mason. All those in favour? Thank you. All those against? Carried. Section 4 is planning delegations. Can we have a mover and seconder for the planning delegations? Councillor Harwood, Councillor Mason. All those in favour? All those against? It's carried. Section 5 coming up is confidential. I need a mover and seconder to place the 2023-24 First Nations Cultural Heritage Grants into confidential. Mover, Councillor Harwood, seconded Councillor Wilkinson. All those in favour? Thank you. Number 5.2 is Audit and Risk Summary Report to go into confidential. A mover in Councillor Harwood, seconded Councillor Wilkinson. All those in favour? Thank you. Right, everyone, we are now to consider the remaining agenda items in the confidential section of the meeting. So I have to close the meeting to the public. Can we have a mover and seconder? Moved Councillor Mason, seconded Councillor Harwood. All those in favour? Thank you, that is carried. There's no one voting against that one. I'd like to thank both our virtual and in-person gallery members who did join us here this evening, and thank everyone for their participation in local democracy. It's been a pleasure having our first council meeting out here in the Northern Aquatic Community Hub. I'm sure there'll be many more to come. Thank you all. Good night.